Welcome to The Prisoner's Dilemma, show where we watch and talk about the 1960s TV show The Prisoner. I'm Brendan, and with me is my co-host, Matthew.
Hi, how's it going?
I've got 72 hours to live.
Oh.
Yeah, I got caught by the mysterious organization that captures podcast hosts.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And
yeah, that can happen.
I explained to them, relatively new at all this. I mean, you could grab Roman Mars.
Yeah, totally.
You could grab
McElroy.
You could grab any of the assorted McElroys, including Clint. You could grab Clint McElroy, and you'd still somehow get more information than I do. But unfortunately, they did not believe me, and so they tortured me.
Oh, yep. But they've released you for 72 hours so you can record this podcast.
They have released me for 72 hours, and then I'm going to be turned into a simple fool with electricity.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how they do it.
And I'm here to warn you.
Oh, okay.
Because you're also a podcast host.
That's true, I guess.
They're going to come for you, too.
They'll come for us all eventually.
In the future, everyone will be required to have a podcast.
Everyone has a podcast but you, a book everyone read.
So a few years ago, 5 years ago now at this point, I went to Gen Con.
Okay.
And I only signed up for one game. I signed up for the one of the playtest sessions of Heart that Grant Howe was running. This was before Heart came out. Heart's a tabletop role-playing game. It's good. And we had a great group of people at the table. I'm still friends with a couple of the people that we played with there.
Nice.
And we were going around the table introducing ourselves. A bunch of people did stuff, made stuff in the scene. And one person said, hi, my name is such and such. I don't have a podcast. And then he handed me a business card that said, I don't have a podcast.
All right.
Yeah.
The one safe person.
Yeah. Very respectable.
Yeah, they'll never have a balloon on a string. Or on a stick?
Both?
What did we do this week?
I don't know. Don't you want to talk about, like, I don't know, Gladiator? Or, I just played Anthology of the Killer. We could play we could play through all of Anthology of the Killer, and I could walk you through what I thought of it.
Yeah. No, Brandon, I have terrible news for you.
Uh-huh.
I really like this episode.
Oh no, I'm being tortured by my captor.
That's right. I've been number 2 all along. I take off my Mrs. Butterworth wig and dress to reveal the number 2 outfit underneath.
Wow, aren't I a monkey's uncle?
Yeah, that's what they call you.
This week we watched Dance of the Dead. Despite no, you know what? I'm not gonna rag on that. I'll get to it in due course. Matthew, why do you like Dance of the Dead so much?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, so it's got one of my favorite The Prisoner directors on it. This is the guy who did Chimes of Big Ben. This is Don Chaffee.
Don Chaffee.
If we recall, he's the guy who did 1963's Jason and the Argonauts. He did Pete's Dragon. And so I think he's really good at really striking visuals. There's a whole bunch of shots in this episode I absolutely adore.
I will agree. I think there's some excellent camera work in this.
And I think this number 2, Mary Morris, is my favorite lady number 2. Maybe one of my favorite number 2s overall. That's very possible.
I think. Sorry, you were about to say something.
No, please.
No, please.
You disagree?
No, finish your thought.
I think that of the number 2s, she has such a distinct affect. She's sort of treating this whole thing like it's a game or a joke to her. And I think that that's really intriguing for a number 2 to take on sort of that outlook.
I agree that she has a striking presence. I think she does a lot with a little. I wish there was more for her to do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
But she mostly gets a series of like one-on-one or two-on-one conversations with Six. And I think that her performance there, and even like the little ticks she does, like little ways, little expressions she does, I'll call out some of them as we go through, are really good. And they really add a lot of depth to a character who in the script is not particularly deep. And in fact, and we'll probably get into this, I don't know if you want to do this now or later, but she was never meant for this role at all.
No, it was supposed to be an actor named Trevor Howard, who, if I recall, had to call in sick.
Yeah, he did have to call in sick. I mean, so Trevor Howard is like a very famous actor.
What would I know him from?
He was the star of Brief Encounter and The Third Man.
Okay.
He was in the 1978 Superman. He's the first Elder of Krypton.
All right.
He was in Gandhi. He's an Emmy Award winner. He was awarded or nominated for Golden Globes several times. So this is like a really, really strong actor. And the script was definitely written with him in mind. And then, yes, as you say, he basically had to call in sick. They get Mary Morris. They don't even change the shooting script. They just do rewrites. Like, they're doing it live. Like, the director and, Patrick McGowan working together, figuring out how they're going to make changes.
Right.
So I think that, she, given all of that, she puts in a really strong performance. She really, makes a clear... really makes this character of number 2 particularly clear, particularly iconic, which I like a lot. And then the other thing I really like about this episode, and there's some theme stuff going on here too around children or childhood and games that we can get into as we get into, which I think is actually quite fun. I don't think a lot of that's in the script. I think a lot of that's just in the directorial decisions, which is cool. But that's, I think, better for the episode. But the other thing I really like for this episode is we get a much clearer look into village bureaucracy than we've gotten before.
I'm making faces.
Just based on the number of based on the number of wardens we see. This is the most confirmed wardens in an episode.
Wardens as in people that are in the village that are also working for the village.
Exactly. Right?
Sure, I think that is... Okay. Here's why I don't like this episode.
Yeah, please. I was waiting for at any point to you to do this.
No, I wanted you, I wanted you to have your space. I wanted you to have your moment. Before I mercilessly drag you down in front of the rest of the class. I think there's a lot to like about this episode. I think it's very well put together. I think there's some excellent performers in it. I think there's some really neat concepts. I think there's a couple of really good exchanges. Mm-hmm. I don't think this episode tells us anything or elaborates or reinforces or even highlights anything that we didn't already know about the village or about number 6 or about how any of it operates. And
it doesn't push the plot forward at all.
No, not even does it not push the plot forward, but it is very much... It's wrong to call it a lore episode, but it is absolutely building out the setting in a way. Mm-hmm. I think it is demonstrating for a new viewer, perhaps, hey, here's how everything operates, right? Mm-hmm. Where you got this one guy... It dropped into the situation, right? Where he's trapped in this peculiar place where people see to his every need, put pretty maids in front of him.
It's true.
Host balls and parades and strange elections all the time.
Yep.
And you're simply not allowed to leave, and you're expected to give up information under threat of electronic...
whatever it is.
Whatever is going on when we get to the summary. All of that is great. That's fine. But we know all that already.
Totally.
Because we're halfway through The Prisoner.
Totally.
Now, I'm sure we're going to get into it. This was an episode that was written once the first episode had been written, and a number of different people, including Anthony Skeen, who we talked about previously, much praise for A, B, and C, and for Many Happy Returns. This is the third of his Prisoner episodes that he wrote. But the
final one, yeah.
Yep. And so he and a number of other people wrote an episode based on the concept, basically given everything the story Bible, as we have called it, and the finished script for Arrival.
Yes.
This was the fourth one produced.
Yep.
The only one, excuse me. Yes, this is the fourth one produced. The only ones before this were Arrival, Free for All, and Checkmate, which is what comes next. We'll talk about that soon.
Yep.
Chimes of Big Ben doesn't exist yet before we get to this point. Chimes of Big Ben, which is the actual second episode. But in every way, this feels like it is supposed to be the episode that is the one right after Arrival. Because...
I disagree with you there.
Because...
Good.
Of a number of characterizations, which we'll get to. But also because there's so much that is just setting up, like, welcome to the village. We do things a little bit differently around here. Things are a little bit zany, a little bit peculiar, that kind of thing. And I feel like, and particularly because there is no change to the status quo at the end of it. It is completely... I gained nothing... I gained nothing from watching it, I guess.
Sure.
Even in an appreciation of, that was a good episode of The Prisoner. It feels like a proof of concept in a lot of ways. It feels like a pilot episode, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
I would call it a tone piece.
Sure, I think that's fair. Absolutely.
So, yeah, you're completely right. I don't think that this, if we're thinking about, like, the narrative or even, like, the audience's understanding, this episode does not progress it at all. But I don't need that, personally. because I already have that in other places in The Prisoner. And so I really enjoy getting to just spend this, whatever it is, like 45, 50 minutes, just like languishing in the bizarre Seussian qualities of the village.
That is fair, and I think that I might be higher on it if I thought the rest of the episode was up to the performance of Mary Morris, because she is streets ahead of everyone else in here. The doctor, the observer, this strange trial. There's so much that could be good, that could be a lot more gonzo, that could be a lot more like cranked up to a degree that is like much more theatrical in the way that she is operating. But a lot of it, and in particular, like the apparent climax of the episode, is all taken very stoically, is all taken very...
We'll get to that.
Yeah, it's all taken very seriously in a way that number 6, and certainly not the audience, are invested in. I don't think any of that really operates on the scale that even other episodes operate on. Like the amount of desperation and intrigue that we see at the end of A, B, and C, right? The fever pitch of the back and forths with Leo McKern. We've seen so much. We've seen so much better from these people that to see an episode like this that I could forgive for being such an early effort midway through the season just feels, we've talked about episode order before. I think this is one that they really should have thought, let's put this earlier, or maybe let's do a 16 episode series.
Wow. Okay. I wouldn't want to lose it. All right. So here I'm going to introduce the game I'm playing this episode.
Ooh.
Which is, this is episode 3. Remember earlier for Free For All, I said, this is episode 2.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I'm playing this game.
Listeners of The Prisoner's Dilemma will remember. Brendan has no memory. That's an important tool we'll use for later.
Yeah, this is my sequel game to the free for all. This is episode 2 game.
Okay, I can see that.
Well, I have many reasons to say that. I should have said 6 of 1, which is this big like annual conference convention, fan convention for The Prisoner. They have their own ordering, and they agree with me in terms of it goes Arrival, Free for All, and then Dance of the Dead. Now, I disagree with them later on, but I'm just going to mention that up here at the top. All right, summary time.
Tell us what happens in this dang Dance of the Dead.
Yeah. We open on a doctor, number 40, attempting a risky experiment on 6 without 2's approval, which involves a Richard Walton Dutton, an old colleague of 6's. 2 discovers the experiment and immediately calls it off. The next day, 6 questions his new maid about when the village supplies are shipped in, learns about an upcoming carnival, befriends a black cat, ignores number 2's hand-picked selection of potential girlfriends, tries and fails to chat up his observer, number 240, and learns there's a force field around town hall. That night, suspecting that the village supplies are shipped in while everyone sleeps, he breaks out of his residence. On the beach, he is met by Rover, who chases him until he collapses, exhausted. When 6 awakens, he finds a dead man washed up on the beach. He discovers various items in his pockets, including a radio. He ascends the church tower. He ascends the church tower to listen to the radio, hearing a mysterious broadcast before he is caught by numbers 2 and 240. He returns to the corpse and, along with a new note, releases it back into the ocean. He is spotted by Richard Walton Dutton, and the 2 briefly chat, with Dutton sure he's not long for this world. That evening, 6 attends the carnival, a costume ball. He slips away, discovering the corpse from earlier in a morgue. 2 reveals her plan to amend it to appear to be his corpse. They return to the party and a cabaret trial for number 6. His crime is possession of a radio, and for it, he is sentenced to death. The costume villagers turn into a violent mob, chasing 6 down. He manages to escape them, finding his way to a room with a telemax machine, supposedly how 2 receives orders from 1. He destroys the machine only for 2 to catch him. After a brief conversation where 6 insists they'll never win, 2 begins to laugh, and the telemax machine inexplicably springs back to life. We end with a typical ending of 6's face behind bars, but with 2's laughter echoing over it.
I think it's Roland.
Is it Roland?
Roland Walton Dutton.
Roland Walton Dutton, sure.
Maybe they changed it for America.
Probably. Yeah, you're right. I think I just mistyped it in my remembering of the summary. But you're right, it is Roland.
Now, listeners of the podcast will think, wait a minute, how did Brendan remember that? Brendan can't remember anything. Good question.
And? A secret trick. It's as inexplicable as a telemax machine coming back to life.
But there's a lot of inexplicable in this episode, in my humble opinion.
I think it's just to real quick call it out just immediately after the summary, right? Like, I tried to make that summary as trimmed down as possible, but hopefully even in my listing of things, it was really clear. Like, there's just so many dang scenes in this episode.
There are a lot of scenes and not a coherent story.
No, definitely
There's not a plot to this episode. Like, this is not
Definitely
an episode that has a Act 1, 2, and 3. It's not an episode where number 6 has a plan. It's not an episode where, which isn't to say that he needs to have one, but it's also not an episode where number 2 has a plan for how she's gonna get him. You know, famously, the number 2s are always trying to get number 6.
It's true. When I get you.
Yeah. And certainly she pesters him and tries to make clear the rules of the situation. Again, something that would make a lot more sense if it was in the beginning of the series. But there's not much animus here. There's even when he is face to face with the absurdity of what is going on around him, he's just sort of like, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think some of that. So, he does have a plan. He just stumbles into it. It's the plan with the corpse.
Sure,
which we'll talk about more when we get there.
He does try to do a thing. That is absolutely true.
Yes. I think that some of this, again, and we talked about reparative readings last week. This is, again, sort of at least partially reparative reading. Some of this starts to make sense if this is directly after Free for All, the election arc, right? Or the election episode.
Sure, yes.
Because in that case, we have a number 6 who did this big plan, who made this big swing, and for it got beaten very badly, right? Physically beaten very badly, right? You'll note there's no fights in this episode.
There are no fights.
Earlier in Arrival, when 6 sees Rover, he like tries to punch it. I don't know if you remember this.
I do. This is definitely. I will say this does one thing, and that is deepening the relationship between a boy and his dog. Number 6 encounters Rover, and the two seem to have an understanding of sorts between the two of them.
Yeah, like he doesn't approach, right? So all Rover has to do is like keep blocking him.
Yeah.
And he can't do anything. He ends up just collapsing, right? So like, so that makes a lot more sense, right? If we think about a number 6 familiar with Rover enough to know, like, okay, I shouldn't mess with this thing, right? But also it's a number 6 who some of that fire, some of that animus has been drained out of him by the experiences he's had so far.
A little, yeah. He certainly seems prickly and needly in the same way that we see him in Chimes of Big Ben.
Totally.
We still see the village trying to foist its faux democracy onto him, much in the same way that we saw Free for All. You know, this is repeated over and over again. We're democratic to a point. Democracy has its uses, et cetera, et cetera.
But I think that's, you even said it in that quote, right? We're democratic to a point.
Sure.
Right? I think at this point, you know, why would, and there's all these lines in this episode that of 6 directly talking about the democracy here being a joke, or 2, you know, winkingly saying, yeah, it's a joke.
Sure.
Right? That like only makes sense if he's already experienced Free for All.
Sure. I mean, I think the number 6 of Arrival had the same sense of, oh, you're democratically elected. Is that right?
But in Free for All, he was still willing to give it a shot, right?
Sure. Once he was brainwashed over and over and over again.
Yes, there is some confusion there, but like he does willingly go to town hall.
He does.
Right?
Yes, that is true.
So there's at least, he was at least open to the possibility there could be a route there to some kind of, at least information, if not like actual democratic power.
Sure, yes.
Right?
In terms of a reparative reading, I think I can see a path there. I don't know if I'm on board with it, but...
Well, I've got the rest of the episode, don't I?
Wait, what did we say the game was?
The game is that it's episode 3.
Oh, that's right. So how do I win the game?
You win the game by refusing me 3 times before the cock crows.
Great. Just like number 6.
Just like number 6. We'll get into that too this episode.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's talk about this first scene.
Please.
We have a doctor here. This is number 40, a.k.a. Duncan McRae.
Yep.
Who's this Scottish, mainly screen actor. Stage actor. He made rare appearances on TV and film, including Avengers, but he died before this episode even aired. So he was mostly a stage actor, sort of transitioning into like TV and screen. Mm-hmm. And most of this scene is him talking to the night supervisor, who is number 48, Michael Nightingale. Michael Nightingale. That's his actual name. Who
I think only shows up in this scene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's an English stage, film, and TV actor. He's best known for the Carry On British comedy franchise, which I've never watched. But also in this scene, we have someone who is only credited as the psychiatrist, B. Duffel. This is the lady who's like standing by number 6 and administering the diodes to his head.
Ah, sure. Okay.
She was the old crone in Monty Python, The Holy Grail, which I just think is fun. And there's also a second doctor, William Lyon Brown, who's in British and TV and film actor, including Avengers and this Great Expectation miniseries. So already, right, like I mentioned earlier, we have so many wardens in this episode. That's 4 of them. They're all credited. They all have numbers, right? It's wild, the number of people in this episode. They still had a budget.
Yeah, I listened to a commentary where there was a panel of people speaking. There was Bernard Williams, production manager, editor John S. Smith, who was not the only editor on this, but who came in to finish things up and went on to edit a bunch of the other stuff, as in other episodes. And film librarian Tony Sloman, who I gather is sort of a subject matter expert on the piece. And they had very little to say about the themes or the characterization. There was a lot of
That's funny.
Number 6 doesn't like power. He's fighting against him.
That's awesome.
This is a power trip when they're torturing him. Very little insight into like what the thing is above and beyond stuff that you might get from a Wikipedia summary, right? Which is fine. They're doing it 40 years after the fact. But what they did have to say was a lot of interesting detail about how the thing was actually put together. And why I bring it up now is because they remarked on how overblown their budgets were. Apparently, it was like 40% more per episode than any episode of The Saint or The Avengers or something like that. And on top of that, they had this reputation as sort of a black dog in the television production because writers and directors were leaving all of the time. Because after the last episode, the seventh produced, remember George Markstein leaves the production. He's the script editor who had been essential to bringing the thing to life. And on top of that, it's this weird thing happening with all this secrecy. People didn't know at the time that it was being filmed in Port Marion. I can't remember the name of the guy that built Port Marion, that weird lord. You know, weird lord.
That weird lord? Yeah. All the signs in Port Marion say, and thanks to our weird lord.
Well, thanks to our weird lord, Aldrich the Ever-Hungry, for our cool little town.
You walk into the town hall and there's a Dark Souls boss.
Yeah. That's why he couldn't get into the town halls, because the fog gate was up.
It was Sir Clo William Ellis.
Thank you. Apparently he forbade them from telling anyone where they were filming until the thing was all done, because he didn't want people screaming,
swarming,
presumably compounding the problem that there was a TV shoot going on all the time. And tourists were already being told, please stay out of the shot. Here, you can be an extra for no money if you feel like it. They had this strange reputation as being super secret and weird and people leaving all of the time. And people didn't quite get it. People would keep asking, like, so what is the show about? And people couldn't quite describe it because of what The Prisoner is, right? And so they remarked, it was a lot of hard work and it was a lot of all hands on deck kind of getting people to do whatever it is that they could do. People from the crew acting as stunt people, for example. I think you're probably going to get to it, but the person that washes up on the shore is a member of the crew.
Oh, no, I don't actually have that name.
Well, I'll get to that in a sec, but
cool.
All that is to say, it sounds like a very, very trying thing to work on, particularly in a situation where when you recorded the film, you then had to send it by train back to London.
Oof, yeah. Wow. Anyway. So what they're doing in this scene, right, is they're doing this unapproved experiment on Six. And they're going to use this Roland Walter Dutton, this Dutton guy who Six apparently knows and is also under their control. Is it in a
trance of some kind, right? The doctor is literally feeding him lines and having them repeat them into the phone.
Yep. To try to get information. So it's like as if number 6 has been woken up from a dream back in London and he's gotten this important phone call and he has to spill some beans over it.
That's right. Does spill beans
doesn't go well.
Mean something different in Britain?
Yeah, it's like don't cry over spilled milk.
Sure. Don't cry over spilled beans.
Yeah. There's so many more beans here. We're in Britain.
That's right. You got a drawer full of beans.
The thing I think is cool about this scene is that it's kind of this inversion of the A, B, and C, number 2 scientist relationship.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Just in that I think it expands our space of what we can imagine number 2s and their underlings getting up to. Right?
Right.
We haven't really seen an underling taking the initiative and going up and over number 2's authority before.
Yeah, that's a good point. If we think of this sort of in conversation with the general idea of I've got this experiment that I'm going to run that has been positioned here as in the village. I'm going to go outside of my authority under number 2's nose and say, I bet I can get some brownie points by getting some stuff out of number 6.
Exactly. And Dutton is explicitly an experiment that, the doctor number 40 is getting to run. He's told explicitly he's expendable and therefore you can experiment with him however you like.
Right? Yeah. Number 40 will say later on, I always get results. But once I've got everything that I can out of someone, then usually it's time for them to kick the bucket.
Yeah.
Does kick the bucket mean something different in Britain?
Yeah. I think it's because of the war.
Oh. Moment of silence.
Anyway, so there's a couple interesting bits in this scene. I don't think we want to spend too much longer on it, but Cobb says a couple interesting things. He says, You
say Cobb?
Sorry, you're right. Not Cobb. Roland Walter Dutton says a couple interesting things. I said Cobb because notably he doesn't mention Cobb's name.
He does not.
Right? But Skeen, the writer, would have had access to the fact that Cobb was another name because Arrival was already done.
Right. Cobb, the other operative from Arrival, who we thought was imprisoned in this way, but seems to have been working for the village the entire time.
Right. And in, Dutton, we have an actual example of this happening. Right. He's like the real version of Cobb. But he says, you, me, Arthur, the Colonel.
Right.
As like 4 names. We have no idea who this Arthur is, unless it's Arthur Cobb, which is possible, because they refer to each other by their last names a lot. The Colonel is really interesting, right? Because we've gotten 2 different The Colonels. We got Colonel James in the last episode that we watched, Many Happy Returns, and we got Colonel J from A, B, and C. And so it's ambiguous what's going on here.
Right.
Assumably, if it was the fact that like Colonel J was the more recent colonel or the one that was directly above them, this would have been about Colonel J.
That was my guess, yeah.
But it is interesting that there's at least some like consistency in terms of like titles that are being bandied around from his prior life.
We have heard of one other Arthur. Do you remember who it was?
No. Who was the other Arthur?
It was the ex-husband of Mrs. Butterworth.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I immediately put that out of my mind because I just assumed it was a lie.
Well, here's the thing. People seem to continue to use elements of their real lives when they're constructing their lives.
It's true.
I think it would be very The Village if it turned out that a Navy general or intelligence officer that Number 6 had been working with for a long time turned out to have been married to one of the Number 2s. I have no evidence of that. I just think it's neat.
Yeah, it's a neat idea. I don't know. I mean, I would certainly argue that this was months later.
Sure.
Right? So it's possible Arthur could have died in the intervening time, right? But assumably Arthur must have been alive at least when 6 thought this phone call was happening.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So like in the recent past, at least. I don't know if there's much more here. 2 shows up. She stops the thing. She seems, of the 2s we've seen so far, we've talked about they have various understandings of the situation. This 2 seems to actually get it in comparison to our like Milky Boy, right? Mary Morris understands it's about winning him over.
Yes.
Right?
She says explicitly it's about he must come on board of his own free will.
Yes. So this is similar to like a Leo McKern style Number 2's understanding of the situation, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
We've said before, she has terrific presence. She's got a very small frame, but she has a very particular look and a particular pitch to her voice that commands a lot of respect. She's very good at projecting power. Really, really fills up a room, no matter who else is there.
Yeah, I didn't talk about her previously, right? But this is Mary Morris. She was born in Fiji, actually, to Australian parents. She was a TV and screen British actress. She was in tons and tons of stuff. She played a lot of like professors and nobles. She's in the 5th Doctor Who special, Kinda, which is a special that I've watched, which is just funny to me.
The name of the special is Kinda?
It's Kinda, yeah, but that's like the name of the planet. Like Kinda, I think, as like a concept of like, oh, it's sort of this, didn't really exist at the time.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, she's fantastic. I really, really like her. And as will become relevant later on, right, when she was a stage actress in like the 1940s, she played Peter Pan pretty famously.
I see.
Yeah. There's still some like classic photos you can see of her like reading to sick children in a hospital as Peter Pan, or like pose next to the Peter Pan statue and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, she's great. Is there anything else in this scene, or should we move on to the next morning?
I think it's time to move on to the next morning.
Okay. Great news, everybody. It's Fenella Fielding.
Yay!
You were worried, Brendan. I don't know if you remember being worried. Yeah, that we wouldn't get to hear her again, but she's here.
Every day I wake up and like Guy Pearce in Memento, I look at the tattoo on my forearm that says, "Where is Fenella Fielding?"
I don't remember if we actually get her more than this, though, so we might be nearing our end of Fenella Fielding. I wouldn't be surprised if she's in Checkmate as well, but I haven't looked. But she's here to, welcome us to another brand new day. Number 6 wakes up. Number 6 asks his TV, how did I sleep?
Yeah.
Number 2 on the TV answers.
I assumed that she was already on the TV by the time that he looks at it. Like, he just wakes up and she's just there because she's going through her morning routine. She stays on the line while he, like, does his ablutions and such. Like, maybe this is just a rhythm that they've fallen into.
Maybe. It does feel that way. But also, this is interesting, right? Because remember, in Free For All, that was our first instance of seeing this number 2 on the TV trick.
That's true. That's true.
Number 6, as you note, in this episode, is not surprised at all to see this.
Not in the slightest.
Which, again, this is episode 3. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to say there.
No, it's episode 2.
Yeah, we'll see how that works.
No, that's not it.
We then get maid delivery.
Yeah, I assume that, I assume they're wearing shoes that go with their period dresses, and that's why they're not being asked to walk up this steep incline.
Maybe, but we never see the maids moving around the village, Brendan.
Sure, maybe they're always getting delivered.
In every episode, they have a trailer of maids that they take from door to door.
I mean, given the quality of this maid, I'm here for it.
Okay.
This is far and away our best maid.
She's very good. So this is number 54. I just find that funny that it's number 54 because if you number 6 grabbed a fake pin number 54 when he was pretending to be a Top Hat in the last episode or in The General. So I just think that's funny that they they just reused it.
Maybe
so this is.
I know we've said before, maybe numbers have roles.
Yeah.
But maybe when you leave your door in the morning, there's just like a big bin and you just grab whatever's on top.
I think that is the legitimate real world reason for a lot of this. What do we have around?
Probably, yeah.
But I have to, I think it's more a bigger deal, and I do have some number thoughts for later in this episode, but I think it's a bigger deal when we have actors or actresses who will show up across an episode multiple times with a number, that they have to be consistent. They have to actually make a decision there, right? So number 54 here is Denise Buckley. She was a Welsh TV actress, and she was in Avengers as well. I'm going to basically say that for everybody in this production. Everybody was in Avengers or Danger Man. We talked about this early on as being well, of course, when you're doing early in production, you're just going to grab a bunch of the people who are in the space, right? And so that's very clearly what's happening in this episode. But yeah, she's great.
Yeah, previously I have bemoaned the wilting lily quality of a lot of the actresses.
Oh, I don't know.
Please don't yell at me. And unfortunately, we're going to get that in one of the actresses for this very episode.
Yep.
This particular, what was her name again?
Denise Buckley.
Denise Buckley actually has an idea of what it means to be charming, to engage with the subject as target of interest. Seems to operate as one of the village weirdos in her weird way, but is still aware of what her job is and is capable of comporting herself in a way that feels convincing. Is totally. This is a man and I'm going to try and get his attention, but I'm not going to be a damsel in distress. I'm going to be just someone who is interesting and charming to be around.
Yes, yeah, very much so. There's this this great exchange, right, where you know what? It's not in the script. That's interesting. That's really cool, actually. But there's this great exchange where, number 6 mentions something along the lines of well, I'm sure you get along with everybody, right? And she says, I've half a mind to report you. And he says, I'm new. Or something like that.
Oh, yeah. So that's not in the script, you're saying?
That's not in the script.
Huh. I wonder if they improvised it.
It jumps directly from... Oh, no. I see. They just reordered it.
Okay.
They reordered it in the script so that number 2's conversation with assumably number 1 occurs after it as opposed to before it. So we get, a woman's always impatient to wear a new dress. How do I look? Different from the last one. The maids come and go. We'll get along. This is the the flirty, thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you get along with everybody. I've got a good mind to report you. I'm new here.
Yeah, that excuses his behavior. Absolutely.
Yeah. He doesn't know that you're not allowed to, like, suggest that the maids sleep around with everybody.
I mean, you're right. He doesn't know that.
But also episode 3, he's new here. Anyway, I'm not going to do this consistently.
Also, the mailman says, sign here, number 6.
And he does not respond. He does not sign.
Yes.
The mailman, by the way, just seems like he's wearing, as far as I can tell, he's just wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt.
I get it.
And then a mailman's hat.
I get it.
It's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
This is number 23, George Merritt, the postman. Mm-hmm. British TV and film actor, small roles, bunch of things where he just plays old man, which,
everyone's got to
work. But yeah, I thought that was interesting that there wasn't like a postman outfit besides just this hat I'm going to put on.
Right.
So then after this sort of scene, we get this brief little fun thing where number 6 tries to like take like a blanket or a towel or something. He like puts it over the TV.
Is that now?
And it makes like a zzz noise, like an angry at you noise. Don't do that. Did you note that?
That's later.
Oh, that's later?
It is.
I thought that was just now.
Nope. This is the parade where number 2 tries to hook him up with someone.
Well, almost, right? So before we get to the parade, we actually get this brief conversation of number 2 and number 1, right? Or maybe number 1.
Oh, well, yes, there's a conversation over the phone with number 1, but that happens before the maid even comes in.
You're right. I'm completely higgledy-piggledy here.
See, this is the problem of trying to take prisoner episodes and making them be third in the series. You're you're so confused. Why don't you just take a nice little nap? Why don't you go to sleep and let me hit your brain with electricity or something?
I just really want to call out this quick exchange just because of Mary Morris's face that she makes after the conversation. It's so good. She like rolls her eyes and pierces her lips like.
She's very good at emoting as she's talking on the phone. I want to call out the brilliance of this little camera shot where we're in number 2's office. As you said before, she is talking to number 6 through the TV, and so he's up on the big projector. And then when he goes to the bathroom, he is actually still on screen, but she seems to like turn around in her seat in order to give him some privacy.
And he shaves
and gets this phone call. And so we get her facing the screen with him facing the screen in the background, almost a picture-in-picture effect. It's one of a few really, really nice bits of composition in this episode.
Yeah, Don Chaffee was really good at this stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. I see what happened here. I watched the episode twice, and then I put the notes together from memory, which means that whole sequence is out of order.
I took not only the episodes and put them in the correct order, but I took all of the scenes and put them in the correct order. I basically cut it apart like River in Firefly when she finds the Bible. Remember Firefly?
I do remember Firefly. What a show.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we then get, after 6 refuses to sign for the carnival card, we at least see the little placard. Right.
There is going to be a carnival. Carnival.
Yes. And then we immediately jump to a classic village parade.
They love parades.
They love ska glasses.
Yep. They're twirling their umbrellas. Actually, this shot with the umbrella and the villagers going to the parade is actually very good also.
Yeah, it's really nicely shot.
Yep.
We get our first instance of the town crier here, but he won't speak a line yet. He'll show up later.
He's sort of leading the festivities for Carnival.
Yeah.
We get the Black Cat.
Black Cat. It's actually a different Black Cat. I went back and compared.
Yeah. Apparently Yes.
Nope. You got something?
Apparently they had shooting in both Port Merion and on set, and so they needed a Black Cat for both of those. And so there are 2 Black Cats playing the same role, like Flipper or Lassie.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember
like those
Flipper?
Things. I do remember
Did Flipper ever meet Lassie?
Did Free Willy ever meet Lassie?
Did Flipper? Don't be ridiculous. Free Willy went back to the ocean. How would Willy meet? Wait, did Lassie ever go to the ocean?
Yeah, Lassie could go to the ocean, and then Free Willy could eat Lassie.
I don't like that.
Is Lassie the one that got rabies? No, that's Old Yeller.
So far as I can tell, Flipper did not meet Lassie.
I'm glad we at least got a Googling bit into this episode.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Anyway, we get this brief back and forth here as number 6 pets this black cat with number 2, where they basically reset the stakes. This is the thing you were talking about. Like, we already know all of this stuff, right?
Sure.
So I don't think there's much to like hold on to here or anything particularly interesting.
But she is trying to get him to participate. She's trying to say, we have a thing going here. You can see through it, yes, but you're not going to escape, and you're going to have a good you're going to have a better time if you just enjoy yourself. We have everything. Yes. We're about to have a nice holiday. Find yourself a pretty girl and go to the ball.
Speaking of pretty girls, she leads them to a table with 3 blondes, who are all dressed in like sort of like flight attendant outfits.
Yes.
They're all in this red. It's like a uniform. Or bellhops, maybe, but they're like wearing fezzes. They all have infinity symbol like buckles or brooches on.
I took it to be like a bow.
It definitely could be, but it looks like an infinity symbol.
Sure, yeah. It's like a bow made of cord or something like that. Here is where I would like to begin playing my game.
Ooh.
Everyone in this episode is wearing a stupid hat. You score a point whenever you spot a stupid hat. Here I have scored 4 points. You're already losing.
The town crier has a tricorn hat.
Okay, you get 1 point. You're still losing. Okay, you're losing before you were born.
That's fair. Well, we're immediately going to glance over to number 240 as 6 catches the eye of his observer.
And what is she wearing?
What about her?
She's also wearing a stupid hat.
I mean, it's actually very similar to Mary Morris's hat.
It looks like a Smurf hat.
Yeah, she's
Remember
a Smurf.
the Smurfs?
I do. Why are we doing Remember Them this
I'm trying
episode?
to do anything other than talk about Dance of the Dead.
I like this episode.
Remember how the Smurfs invented zombies?
The Smurfs versus zombies?
No, invented zombies.
No, I do not remember how they invented zombies. Yeah. Did Gargamel, like, have some people rise from the dead or something?
Hang on. Here's from ScreenRant.com. I'm a grown-up, and the dark history of the Smurfs still terrifies me. I'm not going to read this.
Yeah, fair. Don't read anything from Screen Rant if you can avoid it.
Smurfette has a messy, gender-stereotyped history.
What?
Gargamel was nearly sent
girl Smurf?
Gargamel was nearly sent to hell in the Smurfs.
He should have been. For his crimes?
The Smurfs were part of a frightening UNICEF campaign.
All right. Anyway, number 240. I think number 240 is the weakest part of this episode.
She's not very good. She is his observer.
Yes.
We'll recall from Arrival that
number 9.
Number 9 was assigned to observe number 6 and report what he's up to.
Yes.
We get a little bit more detail here in the idea that any troublemakers have an observer assigned to them, which makes sense. We could have inferred that, I guess. But I gestured before at weakness of a lot of the bit actresses' roles and guidance from direction, I think, in how they're supposed to play these characters. This is a character who is clearly trying to play by the rules of the village.
Yep.
Maybe understands that they're not good, but is trying to play along with them anyway because she feels threatened. And is also threatened by number 6's badgering, his insistence on breaking the rules himself, and can do nothing about it but not even fawn, but like just sort of wilt. Right? It's just sort of like, stop, please don't ask me anything.
Yeah, she just keeps on repeating the line that was on a poster in episode 1. Questions are a burden to others and answers a prison for oneself.
Yes.
Like it's a mantra. And she just looks confused in this scene.
Yeah, like I could buy her performance a lot more if we got some sense of inner turmoil of what we saw from Jane Marrow out of clearly acting against number 6's will, but feeling or behaving conflicted about it. I just don't think she has the juice.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's also this sort of weird thing that I think they want us to think that she's into him still.
Yeah, let's talk more about that a little bit later. There's a particular scene where I felt that vibe, yes.
Yeah. Just a note, right? This is Norma West.
Yeah, this is
That's
who we're
her name.
badmouthing.
Yeah. Let's make this clear. She's actually a South African actress, and she was in a ton of like TV and movie stuff. She was like in Agatha Christine Poirot stuff, some Sherlock Holmes stuff, Miss Marple stuff. So a lot of like detective fiction things.
Right.
Yeah. So there's not a lot here. You're right that we get, not everybody has an observer, which makes sense just in terms of pure numbers.
Right.
And we also learn later that it's like it's a one-to-many thing, right? So she actually has several people that she's observing.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And she's told like who should you be focusing on at a particular moment.
Right.
It's also interesting, per the discussion we had back during Free for All, right? That like there has to be a person still. Like they have all of this high-tech spy equipment, but at the end of the day, they still need a person who's actually observing another person.
Yeah, there's this network of decision making, right? There's this arbitration of how suspicious is suspicious enough to report. Even if you report, do you actually do something about it? That sort of thing, where you're constantly sort of evaluating, do we let him stick his neck out a little bit further, or do we go ahead and bring him in?
Yeah. Then we get this very fun bit where she leaves and he tries to follow her. There's not a lot to the sequence, but it's really beautifully shot.
Yeah. She goes to Town Hall, which we have seen before.
Yes. And Rover keeps on blocking him.
Yeah, Rover isn't like, he's not chasing or doing anything.
No.
He's just sort of like awkwardly getting in the way. Like, no, stay this way. Presumably trying to stop him from like throwing his body into this force field that the fog gate that leads into Town Hall.
Well, it's interesting to say that, right? So we get to this bit where he tries to get into Town Hall. And by the way, we actually get like an establishing shot of Town Hall. We get that great bit of like Hercules holding up the world behind that we talked about in Free for All. But we actually get this establishing shot of like from a distance, you can actually see this building they're saying is Town Hall at the end of this scene.
Right.
But number 6 goes to just move into this into Town Hall, which if Free for All does happen before this, of course he would think he could just go into Town Hall, right? Because he did last time.
Right, of course.
Right?
But I recall he was invited to go in there.
Yes. But he doesn't know the difference at this point.
Of course.
It takes a gardener in a weird red outfit to tell him, no, dude, you can't just go in there.
Don't do it.
It's picky about who it lets in,
right?
Is what he says, which is fun.
Yeah.
I don't have the credit for this gardener. I suspect he was an extra, unpaid extra.
They said what his name was in the director's commentary.
Oh, that's interesting.
And don't remember what it was.
That suggests he was an actor, right?
Well, maybe. I've mentioned this before, but it seems like they did a great deal of just tapping people like, hey, we need someone for this role. Can you fill in? People from the crew.
Yeah.
I think
that's very possible.
Guy that is going to be washed up on the beach is the prop master for the show. The picture in the wallet is people from the crew who happen to have a picture of themselves as a couple.
That's funny. Yeah, so it's here where we get this back and forth scene between number 240 and the day supervisor. So we're not going to have any Patrick Swanwick in this episode at all.
Right.
So none of our traditional number 28. And so we have a day supervisor number 22 and this night supervisor number 48 who we won't see again. But the day supervisor number 22 is played by Camilla Hasse or Hace. I don't know how you pronounce her last name. Again, British TV actress. Again, a bunch of spy, police, and detective roles. There's a real through line here. But I think it's interesting that we sort of see even how is the observing supposed to work, right?
Yeah. In Arrival, it seemed as if they were just sort of tailing them, being around them. This makes a great deal more sense in that they're leveraging the mass observation technology that they have here. It seems a little bit weird that they are doing it from the control room, given how many other things they seem to need the control room for, but maybe number 6 is just that high a priority.
Well, it's also interesting that we now know this control room that we've seen a bagillion times appears to be connected to Town Hall.
Right. Yes.
Which we did not know before this moment.
Yeah, I guess we didn't.
And, we see number two's coming into this place. Like, this is the room that we're watching at the beginning of the episode where, like, number 40 is doing, like, the doctor, evil scientist experiment to it.
Right.
And we know that, like, the stairs leading out of Town Hall appear to be, like, a route out of the village. Because we see several people exiting from those stairs to indicate they're leaving the village.
Right.
So it's really interesting that you
going to serve their new masters.
Exactly. So it's really interesting that you get to this from Town Hall, a place that we've been before and that we'll be in again at the end of this episode.
Right.
Though it'll look very different than it was before.
Yes, it will.
I don't think there's really much to this conversation back and forth between the two of them here. There's a more interesting one later.
Yeah, again, this is we're a quarter away through the episode. This is the first commercial break?
Something like that.
Not a lot has happened so far. And
almost nothing.
There is not, like, we've been told there is a carnival and number 6 is expected to attend. We've had a few characters introduced to us.
Yes.
But there is no real, like, and here is the beat that will leave you hanging as as we go to commercial. Which for a show in primetime is kind of surprising. I don't know if I can chalk it up to artistic intent necessarily, but I don't know. I feel like, as I said, not a lot happens here, and I feel like more should have. Yeah,
that's fair. I'm happy with the sort of visual feast of how pretty the episode is, and like getting more of a view of like how like the observing works. How like the observers and the supervisors talk to one another, right? The supervisor is clearly this lady's boss.
Sure.
Which is interesting. It's also notable that the day supervisor is a woman, right? Like, this is our first supervisor, right? We've had, famously, we had a black supervisor in an earlier episode. We commonly have Peter Swanwick and other sort of white dudes as supervisors. This is the first time we've had a white woman as a supervisor, or any woman at all. This is sometimes called the woman's episode, which I don't...
More white woman supervisors.
Woo! We come back, he's feeding the cat some ice cream? Did you catch that?
I was wondering what that was. It was coming out of a little can.
Yeah, he's feeding the cat ice cream. He's got a little... It's like one of those little, like, like half quarts or whatever. You could get like a Ben & Jerry's or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He's got one of those. It's got it's supposed to have like a plastic wrapper on the inside. He's like getting the ice cream out to feed to this cat.
Gotcha.
Because he's going to use that plastic wrapper later. And in the script, he's supposed to say that he wanted to get milk at the store, but they were out. And this is when he starts to question, like, well, where do the supplies come from? I've never seen supplies come in.
Where does it come from? How does it get here? The milk, the milk, the milk.
That's right. That's right. It's all big milk this whole time.
The whole time.
Number 1 is just a big old glass of milk.
This maid is not happy about this cat.
No. We're not supposed to have cats, right? We're not allowed animals.
It's a rule.
It's a rule. There's a lot of talking about rules in this episode because it's all a game.
This is, I think, where we really start to feel this presence of there's a code of behavior that you are supposed to intuit rather than be told explicitly. And if you do not behave according to that code of behavior, then bad things will happen to you.
Yeah, you have to stay within the magic circle.
No, I've been hoisted.
For people unfamiliar, right, the magic circle is this like theory of how play functions, right? That we basically define a space defined by rules, like a play space. And when you follow the rules, you are staying within that space, and that space is called the magic circle. When you step into it, right, you are entering the magic circle. You're entering this sort of other sort of reality where you follow rules you otherwise wouldn't have to follow, right?
Right. This is from Huizinga, from Homo Ludens, a study of the play element in culture.
Yes.
Sort of.
Homo Ludens.
Sorry, go ahead. No, you.
I was just going to say, Homo Ludens is sort of a, for people unfamiliar, is sort of a, like a keystone text for game studies as an academic field. Yeah, but I think this is interesting. I do want us to keep on thinking about like games and play and being inside the magic circle of like having these rules you're trying to intuit throughout the rest of this episode. You're right. Here's the fun bit where he does the thing with the pillow, where he tries to block the pillow, and the TV gets really mad at him for trying to block it.
Yeah, what is it doing? Is it like?
I think it's just buzzing.
Yeah, is it buzzing because something bad has happened, or is it buzzing because it's doing like as if you have taken a microphone and held it up to a speaker? Is the
Could be it.
Like maybe the implication is this pillow has a microphone in it because it is also spying on him?
That'd be great.
That's my reparative reading.
That's good. That's a good one. I like that a lot. I'm adopting that into my worldview.
Right.
Incorporating that into my worldview.
Yeah, incorporate that into your worldview.
I sure have.
Great.
Then there's sort of the quick bit here. The maid goes off in a huff. We have a guy who's planting flowers outside his window with a flower box.
I hate flowers.
This is John Frawley, who's Australian stage, TV, and film, and Avengers. Yes, there's this fun bit of Six saying, well, what if I don't want flowers? And he goes, oh, it's called flowers. It's carnival.
I don't know if I like that number 6 voice he just did.
Hey, he's Cockney, ain't he?
No.
Oh, man. Improve the prisoner with Cockney number 6. Just using rhyming slang all over. No, they would never get a Cockney.
No.
They wouldn't want that on their side. And we get this scene where a maid is giving him what is clearly a drugged thing of tea.
Yep.
Right? This night maid is in the more traditional sort of maid outfit. She's not in like a fancy green dress as our earlier day maid was. And in fact, this maid is a actress that we've seen before, who is I missed where I put her in my notes. There we are. Patsy Smart, number 31 in this case. Mm-hmm. But she was the waitress from episode 1. She was Miss Roberts in Upstairs Downstairs, also in Avengers Danger Man. I think it's interesting, right, that we have a repeat in this way from Arrival, from this first episode.
Right.
And it's of this this waitress figure who's like the first human he talks to in the village. I don't think it's supposed to be the same character, the same person in universe.
No, I don't think so. But
it's fun to imagine for a moment that it is, because then you get this situation where people he's seen in other roles, they're swapping out round their roles on him.
Sure.
Just little background bits. It's just fun to think about for me. Mm-hmm. Then we get this extremely funny bit where number 6 isn't sleepy at all. He wants to stay up. And so he sort of wanders around his dark apartment. The observer is watching him the whole time. The door is locked. He can't leave.
We should call it out. When he was talking with the maid, he's like, I've never known a night. I seem to be trapped in my place. I go to sleep.
I just sleep.
I don't dream. I just sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's cognizant of the fact that they seem to be putting everyone to sleep in order to do things, right? Whether that's bringing things in, coming into his house and putting electrodes on him. It's not clear whether he remembers that or not, but...
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because surprised to see Dutton later.
Right, but he seems to be aware that something is going on.
Yeah. And it's, again, this is clearly an early episode. This doesn't help me with my 3 argument, but it is clearly an early episode because we know that he's seen the night before, right? In the series as we've watched it. We also get this brief cut in of number 40, the doctor, and number 2 meeting in front of this sort of fancy looking door. Mm-hmm. And number 40 suggests, oh, you're going in to speak to him, right? And is worried that he's going to be reported on for his little, experiment with number 6. And number 2 is actually, of the number 2s, she seems pretty chill. She's
I think she knows that if in exchange for saying, no, I'm not going to do that, he can owe her a favor.
Totally. Yeah. She's very manipulative, but she plays it very nicely here, right? Saying she's just going to chalk it up to enthusiasm.
Right. She's playing the game, as it were.
She is playing the game, yeah. But we do get this impression that she's going into this door to talk to assumably number 1 or some other higher up.
Right.
Then we get this silly bit of number 6 laying down on the couch and the lamp, the worst hypno lamp in the series so far.
It's not good.
It's not a good hypno lamp.
They really need to up their super science.
They really do. Because it's just number 2's voice going, sleep.
Do you know this is actually Fenella Fielding?
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh. Very different sounding than usual.
It's evil Isabel. Or as I like to call her, Isabel.
How'd you know it was phenylephrine? Did you just recognize it?
No, it was from the director's commentary. They were calling out people left and right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Fascinating. She does have quite a range. It is funny. You can get the sense of like why number 6, when giving, Patrick McGowan, when he was giving like directions to phenylephrine, just told her not to make it sound too sexy.
Well, it didn't work.
So we see 6 going out the window.
Yeah, he's desperate not to have to listen to this anymore.
It is interesting. We can see the cat is now sleeping on his bed, right? And when he goes out the window, and the observer calls in number 2 to say, hey, he's gone, the cat is immediately in number 2's office.
Yeah. I didn't know what to do with this. Unless...
Cat's a robot.
Yeah! The cat is a robot, and there are many different cats. They're being used as drones.
I have a different theory here.
Okay.
Besides robots, which is we know when we click back, right?
Yes.
To number 2.
What do you mean click back? Oh,
sorry.
When the camera cuts back.
So yes, when the camera's on number 2 and number 2 opens up like her projector, her view to get onto number 6, it's now like dawn.
Given what we see in the next scene with number 6, that makes a lot more sense.
Right? And so what I think happens here, we don't actually see 240 and 2 speak to one another.
Right.
So I think what's happening here is we're getting a cut from 240 to 2, which suggests those two are speaking to each other. But I think what's actually happened here, because I don't think 240 would have a direct line to number 2. I suspect there's like a chain of command here. We literally saw there's...
She has a boss.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I suspect what happened is she called the night supervisor. The night supervisor did a scan with some other abilities, and then they get this up to number 2. So that when you get back here and the cat's here, I think just a bunch of time has passed.
That makes a lot of sense, because in the scene that we're about to see, that is played as if it is contiguous with all of this, and so is in the middle of the night, or is at the time that people are supposed to be going to sleep, the sun is out.
Yes.
And so it makes a lot more sense that actually a lot of time has passed and it is now sunrise.
Yes.
And when number 6 is on the beach running away from Rover, it is happening hours later, not just now, and we're pretending that it's a different version of nighttime when the sun is out, like we're in Alaska or something like that. Or perhaps the North Pole.
Or perhaps. There's another interesting thing here, which is there's sort of a theme in this episode of like day and night, right? Like day and night are actually important in this episode in a way that they have not been previously in The Prisoner.
Yes, that's true. Curfews are a thing here, right?
Curfews are a thing. You're locked in. We have different supervisors for the day versus the night, right? And we see, like, we start on a night, right? Because we start on 6 undergoing this weird experiment, right? But we don't get to see 6 experience a night until the end.
Right.
Right? Assumably 6... Go ahead.
He makes comment of, we're allowed out after hours for Carnival.
Exactly. And if I'm right that like there is this big time jump, right? And you know, probably this is production constraints around like when could they film things or how could they film things with different cameras. But if I'm right that there's been this big gap, there's a big gap in here where 6 assumably was like wandering the village and we don't get to see it. That's not the part we get to observe.
Yeah. So there's a couple of documentaries about the production of the show. From Don't Knock Yourself Out, Dance of the Dead's first cut was so bad that McGowan said, maybe we shouldn't do this one. Put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
With no plans to return to it. And it was only when an editor, John S. Smith, who's part of the commentary track, came back to it.
Yeah.
He went and used some of the additional material that was put together and edited it in such a way that it was presentable, right? That it wasn't necessarily like as good as everything else, but that it worked as an episode. And so I think maybe we're seeing part of that here.
It's very possible. He also mentioned in that clip, right, that like what happened was they didn't shoot the ending in the script, and the script ending is entirely different.
Yeah. I'm curious to learn about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it at the end.
Cool.
So the other thing that's interesting, right, as number 2 responds to this call from whoever it is, she says that this is going to be a test of our efficiency, right? She's turning 6's attempt at an escape or an attempt to gain information here into a game.
Right.
right? Which again, this like continual like ludic, meaning game-like logic that's at play in this episode.
Again, supposing that he hasn't had very many of these attempts before because he is new.
Right.
Because of my game, this is number 3 in the series.
Who is number 3?
You won't get me.
So yeah, we already mentioned it, but Rover finds him on the beach. Number 2 releases Rover. There's this fun little, like, he plays chase with his dog, and then he gets tired and he has to take a nap.
Yeah, it's, putting aside the shock of, like, suddenly it's daytime.
Yes.
There's this interesting thing here where Rover is simply keeping pace.
Yes.
He is alongside, maybe just a little bit ahead, but he is not pursuing or attacking number 6 at all. He is simply corralling him. He is like a guard dog that is taking care of a stray cow. That is simply like, not that way. Not, we can run a little bit, but I'm going to keep pace with you. You're not going to get away. He's not like smothering him and putting him to Betty by. He's simply making sure he doesn't get away.
Which is a bit, right, like, Mary Morris's number 2 already framed this as a game.
Right.
This is more game-like. It is less threatening than we've seen Rover being in the past.
Yeah, we do not want to hurt number 6. We want to show him the situation and then have him come around of his own free will.
Yeah, step into the magic circle. And Rover, of course, is also a magic circle.
He is. That's true.
So 6 wakes up, finds a dead man on the beach. Dead man is dressed extremely similarly to him. He's wearing...
Yeah?
Nope. Yeah, he's wearing khakis and a dark blue black sort of turtlenecky thing.
Yeah, I immediately thought that this was someone from the village when I saw this person.
I would suspect not, given the contraband he's holding.
Once his situation is made more clear, then yes, but just from initial, there's no uniform here necessarily. Correct. There's nothing to identify like this is like a GI or something like that.
Sure. I mean, there's any number of reasons why this corpse could show up.
Sure.
My thinking was the wardens put it there.
That's kind of what I assumed when I first saw it. Again, because it's the middle of the season of The Prisoner, and I know how everything works.
Yeah. So here he finds, we already mentioned it, there's this photograph of assumably this guy with a lady. Mm-hmm. There's a wallet. He's got some cash, and he has this little case that has a transistor radio in it.
Right.
He will then sort of drag the dead man to shore into a cave that's nearby, very handy. And we then jump back to the parade grounds.
This is the same cave that they used in Free for All.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. So it's like it's an actual cave? I thought it was a set.
No, it is on location, so it must be something that's part of the architecture. Yeah, because it's like
I had no idea.
Flattened and like the dwarves of Dwarf Fortress like went in and like smoothed the stone in this area. Sorry, that's a video game. Sorry.
Yeah. You have to talk about Caves of Cud now.
Yeah, no more video games, just Cave of Cud.
We're done with video games now.
That's
Thank
true.
goodness. So here we can talk about the town crier a little bit.
Sure.
This is Aubrey Morris, who was in Clockwork Orange, who was in The Wicker Man, who is like a really big actor. He was in an episode of Columbo. So he's really strong, and they mostly have him giving this little proclamation with everybody in fancy dress that like the carnival's going to happen, that there will be happiness by order, which is great. I love that bit. God, and then everybody...
Aubrey Morris is in an episode of Deadwood.
Yes, yeah.
He's in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I know.
That's bananas.
Yeah, this is a big name guy.
Yeah. But like more than that, like someone that kept at it, right?
Oh yeah, totally. And who was like young enough to like, be part of all these more sort of what we could think of as more modern TV series. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's very cute. I don't know if you noticed it when the group starts doing their weird dance where they just walk up and down the stairs. I don't know what that's about.
I was too busy playing my game. Everyone is wearing a stupid hat.
There's a bunch of them.
Now, unfortunately, it is Carnival, so there is an excuse for everyone to be wearing a stupid hat.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
There's a bunch of these like ladies who are wearing the sort of like flight attendant outfits as well, who are just sort of standing around. But they leave the cat because the cat, I guess, was in the middle of them, and the cat just left there, and Angelo just walks by and sort of like looks at the cat. It's so cute.
It's pretty good. Two kindred spirits. There's a lot of close-up shots of people watching the proclamation as it's happening.
Yes.
And we can hear what we would... there's a lot of moments that seem as if they should be like, let's cheer for the beginning of our nice holiday, where everyone is stone-faced and like completely non-responsive.
Yep.
I have to wonder if this is continuing what we saw at the very end of Free For All, where it's extras, and if they say something, we have to pay them a speaking actor's wage.
I suspect so.
But that contributes to this same feeling of like, yes, we're all here and we're doing this, but we're all drones.
Yes. And it is happiness by order, right? And we're going to get this later on, too. We also, in terms of costumes, right, we have a Perot, right? Perot the sad clown.
I was just taking a screenshot of Perot the sad clown.
There is a sort of like indigenous American, like a Plains Cree sort of outfit that somebody's wearing. So some fun racism for you. There's a matador, right? A bunch of different stuff. We then have Six returning home, fulfilling Two's prophecy that she said earlier he'll have to return home. It's the only place he can ever go.
That's right.
Which is, I think, a really fun line, delivered well by Mary Morris. The maid's there. She's wearing a regular maid outfit, the standard uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And he's had a costume delivered.
He has had a costume delivered.
Hey, Brennan, what's that costume?
It's a tuxedo. His own tuxedo, he says.
Mm-hmm. What do you make of this?
So, have we said what Carnival is?
I mean, we mentioned earlier it's like a costume ball, basically.
Sure, yeah. And that is basically what it's going to amount to here. Like, it is a traditional Italian festival that I believe occurs after Lent. Or is it before Lent?
It's before Lent. You got to get all your sinning out before Lent hits.
That's right. It's like Mardi Gras, right? It's the Italian Mardi Gras. Right.
Yeah.
And so as part of that, you attend this thing where, as we were saying, you wear costumes.
Yes.
You will often put on a mask of some kind or something like that.
There's often a parade.
There's often a parade. And so you are expected to dress up, as you said, as a sad clown or a caricature of something like that. And so this is his costume.
Yes.
This is what they want him to dress up as.
Yes, because the maid, right, again, she mentions, this is, again, our Denise Buckley, number 54. She mentions that other people pick your costume for you.
Yes.
It's a game.
It is a game.
She emphasizes. And
then when he reveals that...
I expected something exotic.
What is it?
My own suit. Specially delivered for the occasion.
What does that mean?
That I'm still myself.
Lucky you.
And they call this out in the commentary. He has never looked more like James Bond than when he puts on this tuxedo. This is what they want him to look like.
Yes.
What do you make of this?
Oh, I have lots of thoughts about this. Some thoughts we'll need later. But I think that's interesting, right? This is his interpretation.
Sure.
That he's still himself, right?
Of course.
And who he thinks of as himself is somebody who looks like a secret agent.
Right.
But also, as we've discussed previously, this is the role the village wants him to play.
Mm-hmm.
And as you've gestured at previously, right? This is the role that maybe Patrick McGowan wanted to escape, that he felt he was imprisoned by. Right?
Yeah, if you imagine what has actually physically happened here, he says it's his own suit, right?
Yes.
And so presumably some sort of agent, maybe the Undertaker, as he kidnapped him in his own apartment when he chokeslammed him into unconsciousness and then hauled him off to...
for $10,000 and a shot at the title.
Or whatever, right? He had a bunch of clothes there because he'd been living there.
Yes.
And so they could have grabbed any of his suits. They could have grabbed anything that he could have worn to an evening situation. And they probably grabbed everything. But the thing that they gave him is the tuxedo. The thing that makes him look like the capital S secret capital A agent. A secret agent.
Dangerous man, if you like.
A secret agent man, if you will.
It's also interesting.
Perhaps more now than ever before, they are giving him a number and taking away his name.
It's true. It's also interesting, right? In our very last episode we watched, Many Happy Returns, he mentions that the suit he wears there is his second best suit.
Oh, interesting.
So I wonder, what is his first best suit?
Who could say?
There's all these interesting things. Like, part of for me, because of the way that I sort of watch the show and I think about the show, I don't mind so much that this episode is so clearly out of order.
Sure.
Because I just rearrange it in my head anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I really like about this following Many Happy Returns is that we get all these interesting, like, thematic echoes between the two, right?
Sure.
Like the suits and the way that he dresses himself, the cats as being this like motif between the two episodes. Even, and we'll get to it later, right? The fact that it ends with him being supposedly to the world dead at sea.
Yes, they do bring that up, don't they?
So to me, I don't mind the chronology issues, because there's this much more interesting like thematic resonance happening between the two episodes.
Sure, I see all those resonances and acknowledge them. Like I'm still pretty high on Anthony Skeen as a writer, and I think that he does a pretty good job putting together two of my favorite episodes of the show. And I think that, as I said, there's a lot to like in here. I like a lot of the individual lines of dialogue. I like a lot of the scenes. I really like that maid who definitely has a name and a number. I just can't remember either one of them.
Number 54.
Number 54, thank you. Again, this little back and forth about the suit is great. There are great moments from number 2 with Mary Morris. I just think that for as late in the series as this lands, I needed it to do a little bit more for me in terms of what it tells me about number 6, what it tells me about the village and what it is that they're trying to do. Sure. I think this stuff works, but would have landed better if it had happened sooner. In much the same way that I think Many Happy Returns is one of my favorite episodes, and I wish it happened 3/4 of the way through the show.
Totally. To me, the ordering is such a consistent issue with The Prisoner that I just like reject it as a concern in my mind.
Well, as you'll remember, I've never seen this show before. Or if I have, it has been washed away.
Speaking of good lines, we get this bit where he's like listening to the radio in his apartment where he or his residence. He can't hear anything because he thinks he has to get up higher to get a signal or something. And the number 40, the doctor, number 2 are watching him on the big screen, the lava lamp screen. And there's just this great line from Mary Morris where she said, he's an individual and they're always trying. And like the double entendre of trying being frustrating, trying like they're attempting things. It's very cute.
Ah, yes, that's pretty good.
So we then go from here to what might be my favorite scene in the episode.
This is the Overlook?
This is the Overlook. This is a part of Portmeirion that we just have not seen a scene in before.
Right.
You get this beautiful shot of like the beach at a distance, right? We can see some of the buildings in the background. And we get just number 6 sitting there quietly as he listens to this bizarre little speech.
Nowhere is there more beauty than here. Tonight, when the moon rises, the whole world will turn to silver. Do you understand? It is important that you understand. I have a message for you. You must listen. The appointment cannot be fulfilled. Other things must be done tonight. If our torment is to end, if liberty is to be restored, we must grasp the nettle, even though it makes our hands bleed. Only through pain can tomorrow be assured.
All right, my dear. Well, these days.
What do you make of this? Like, what do you think this broadcast is?
I mean, so we get 2 broadcasts, right? So we get this male voice where he says, "Nowhere is there more beauty than here. Tonight, when the moon rises, the whole world will turn to silver. Do you understand? It is important that you understand." And I just love that phrase. It's beautiful, surreal, evocative, poetic language to me. But then later, notably, when number 2 comes up, because they catch him, because 240 was watching him the whole time. When number 2 comes up with 240 and asks, does it work? He turns it back on. And it's a woman's voice saying that practice, what was it? That recording was at 60 words per minute. There's like this notion that it's like practice dictation that people are getting to listen to.
I see. Yes, I had assumed that these were part of the same broadcast. It's two different voices, but it's part of a continuing program.
Yeah, and I think that is definitely very possible, and that's all he's picking up. It's some sort of like educational program or something.
Maybe, yeah.
There is, I forget if it was in the official Prisoner Companion or some other fan stuff I was reading. Some people were thinking this might be like coded messages going beyond the Iron Curtain.
Yeah, that's maybe what I wondered, if it was some sort of broadcast meant to be received and interpreted in some sort of coded way.
Yeah, I think it's definitely
Tonight
possible.
When the moon rises, the whole world will turn to silver. Definitely sounds like spy communiques, right?
Yes. I have a message for you. You must listen. The appointment cannot be fulfilled. Other things must be done tonight. Other things must be done tonight. It really feels like this voice is speaking to him.
It does.
If our torment is to end, if liberty is to be restored, we must grasp the nettle even though it makes our hands bleed. Only through pain can tomorrow be assured.
To add to that, it does sound like it's for him, right?
Yeah.
It seems very unlikely that the village would allow other radio signals to arrive unimpeded within their sphere of influence, right? Like, surely they have the technology to block that sort of thing.
Yes. I would be surprised if they didn't. We will see later, in a later episode, that to get a radio signal out, somebody has to like go out on a little raft.
Right. So
there's a sense that like they can actually block radio signals. Maybe that's why he has to go on the Overlook. But yeah, I mean, if we take this as this is all a plant by the village wardens, right? This, just like Free for All, they are actually more subtly than in Free for All, right? They're getting him to do a crime, basically, to do this thing they want, such that they can punish him for it.
Right.
Right?
Or more to the point, I think they are allowing him the freedom to try and make some sort of gesture at escape in order to demonstrate that it is not possible.
Yes, totally. But, you know, what the meaning of this poetic language seems to be saying is you have to still try. You have to try to change the world. Despite it all, despite, you know, grasping the nettle, making your hands bleed, you have to try.
Right.
But that is in direct contrast to what number 2 wants, which is for him to give in.
Which she outright tells him, right? Is like, I want you to give up this dream of ever getting out of here.
Right.
You need to understand that my control here is absolute, that our grasp on you is such that you have no hope of returning to whatever it is that you might think you can return to.
Yes.
And so I think, particularly if we have the reading that we have expressed here, where actually they want him to continue banging his head against things.
Yes.
And particularly if we consider, maybe this is happening earlier in the timeline than partway through the series.
Yeah.
That somehow sparking some sort of hope of resistance here through this communication that is not coming directly from the village.
Yeah.
Through this thing that he thinks he discovered and he is listening to beneath their notice, is a way of encouraging that kind of behavior without giving their hand away.
That definitely could be it. The other thing it could be is that we've adjusted out in the past, right, with like number 12 being sent in by somebody who might be sort of against the village, right? That there are among the village warden higher-ups, there are power struggles, there are plays being made, right? And different people want different things, right? We even get that with just Mary Morris's lovely facial acting in terms of like her rolling her eyes at speaking to a superior, right?
Sure. This could be as direct as the doctor put this corpse on the beach, and number 2 is having to deal with number 6 without giving away this power struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, who knows? But it's really evocative. I really like this scene.
Yeah. It's well shot, too. There's some really, really cool composition of 240 and 2 and 6 all assembled on this overlook and being framed against one another in interesting ways.
Yeah. There's this little fun 2 leaves, 240 is still there, 6 and 240 have this conversation. I say fun. I don't know if I actually like this at all. But where, they go back and forth arguing about things. At the end, she says, "Oh, may I see you later?"
Yeah, so there's this bit of dialogue back and forth between 6 and 240 that I bracketed in my head as like flirting via negging.
Yeah, you could say that.
But it's almost coming from both of them.
Yeah.
That's not true. He is negging and she is like a wet blanket, I guess. There is just this, it is framed and it is written in such a way that it is supposed to be like the charming rogue and the girl who's trying to do right, but simply can't help but give in to his admitted charms, even though she knows that he is wrong and the people that she works for are right.
Right.
But there's no spark of chemistry. There's no reason that either one of them would want to put up with the other for any extended period of time.
Yeah.
And yet it just does not land. It does not have any hint of sauce whatsoever.
Yeah, and this is again Patrick McGoohan being resistant about like these sort of romance angles of these roles, right? Even though we've seen him be more flirty, like he was like way more flirty with Madame Engadine, right? But particularly when they try to foist one of these like wilting flower ladies at him, he just does not put his full self into that.
Yeah, there's something more to be said for the production at this time. As we said before, this is pretty early in the process. McGoohan is still getting the show up and running in a big way. Remember, Arrival had just been put together, and they were putting together a bunch of different potential number 2 episodes. Haha.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, there were a number of bits where they needed to shoot things, and McGoohan simply wasn't available. Because he was writing something, he was directing something, he was producing something, he was consulting on something. There's a lot of stuff where they planned to have him and they had his stunt double basically operating instead, simply because he wasn't on hand in order to be in the show. And so they also talk extensively about how tired and how overworked everyone was.
Yep.
Certainly McGoohan was that for an extended period, and there's some good bits in here, but this is not one of his like standout good episodes of acting.
No, definitely not.
I wonder if perhaps him in a fresher state or with more time to really consider the material and how it could all be put together might have been better rendered.
Yeah. The only really thing that we get out of the scene is that number 6 gets a hint that like number 1 or a way to communicate with number 1 might be in town hall.
Sure, that's true.
Which, explains why he's so interested in exploring during the party later.
It does, although I have to admit I've now watched the episode twice in the past week and I didn't put that together. I think they don't really spell that out very clearly.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. But again, I think part of that is like, this thing of Patrick McGoohan not putting his all into it, right? If he had, you can imagine that we would have gotten some sort of shot that we wanted to squeeze in there of him like realizing like, oh, okay. Yeah, where you work. Oh, I see.
Right. Yeah, this entire episode having the frame story of I am going to disrupt the connection between number 1 and number 2.
Yes.
I think would have driven the action a lot better.
Yes.
It is simply not there, so.
It's not. We then get this long scene where we follow him get this life preserver, right?
Yeah, he's headed back to the cave and the beach, to the corpse.
To the corpse.
In order to put it out at sea so he can basically use it as a message in a bottle, right?
Yes. There's a cut scene here where the doctor and a couple of goons are burying a body before we see number 6 find his body. Mm-hmm. And I think it's supposed to like indicate like, did they find it already?
Sure. Okay.
Did they already bury it? But no, he gets that. And in the script, we get the note he writes.
What is the note that he writes?
It's so bad. Anthony Skeen, I really like your work. This one does not work. He's writing, I'm about to be murdered. I'm about to be murdered by this man who I have a photograph of, and he has his head shot. He's writing as if he's the corpse, and he has supposedly killed the corpse. Killed this man. It doesn't work at all. I understand why they cut it.
So, okay. I've played a lot of video games. I've heard of a lot of audio logs.
Uh-huh.
And I've heard a lot of audio logs that say, boy, I hope I don't get murdered by Patrick McGowan. Well, time to go to my meeting with Patrick McGowan. If all goes well, leave another note. Bye.
Yeah. Includes a copy of...
But usually that's contingent on me knowing who Patrick McGowan is and being in that same location. If a body washes up on my shore in Morocco or whatever, I'm not going to go, well, I guess this guy's a murderer. I guess I'll start looking for him.
I mean, so he also includes a map of the village. He says, like, hey, I'm here. I'm in this place. So the idea is that,
here's some places where I might get murdered.
I've marked on the map. Hi, Sherlock Holmes. I've given you these pieces of information. I gave you all the
clues.
It's so bad. It's so bad. Yeah, I like this version better where they just leave ambiguous what he writes. That's so much cleaner.
Yeah.
It's so much nicer. It's Skeen trying to be too clever with it. There's a bit here which I think is fun where we again have number 22, who again is the day supervisor, and number 240. They're talking because in this cave apparently they do not have any recording equipment, right?
Sure.
So she can't find him. And she mentions, should I try to follow number 34? Should I observe number 34? Who's also clearly assigned to her.
Right.
And number 22 says, no, he's dead. And 240 seems sad about this. She's like, I got to know him very well. And 22 says, well, I didn't get to know you.
That's true. That's a good line.
It's a good line. The girls are fighting. If this show was coming out now, and Tumblr existed, there would be ship art of those two instantly.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Anyway, we next get this scene on the beach, which is another of my favorite scenes in this episode. I really like the final third act. Oh, sorry. I completely skipped Dutton because he doesn't matter at all.
Roland Walter Dutton.
Yes.
You might as well not even be here.
You might as well not. He doesn't matter.
Which is too bad because it's a nice little conversation that they have.
It is. So number 42, Dutton sees him put the corpse back in the water, right?
He sees him from the mouth of the cave?
Yes. He got there somehow otherwise.
Or someone put him there.
Yep. And he immediately thinks that Six has killed this man.
Right. Because he read the note.
I was looking over your shoulder.
No, he overheard number 6 dictating it aloud to himself for the camera's benefit.
Yeah, with a video recorder.
But it was so convincing. My God.
I'm killing you, said number 6. So we didn't mention it earlier, but Dutton is played by Alan White.
Mm-hmm.
His official number is number 42. He was an Australian actor, mostly of the radio and the stage. He was also in Danger Man and Doctor Who.
Right.
And you're right. It's this nice little conversation where, like, Six is now in the position to try to tell somebody else, hey, don't give up hope.
Right.
And we also get a similar...
Because Dutton is someone else from number 6's past, is part of the security apparatus, but is low level enough, or at least so he claims, and number 6 seems to reinforce, that he doesn't have a great deal more to offer up in the way that number 6 might.
Right. But they're convinced he does. They've given 72 hours to wander around and reconsider in the chance that they'll give him something else. He'll give him something else. But he's convinced he's dead, right? We also get interesting timeline stuff here, right? So Dutton has been here for months, maybe. He's lost track of time. And we've seen how, some of the tricks the village will do are about losing track of time.
Certainly.
Right? So he's unclear, but Six is convinced he's been here much less time than that. He says quite recently.
Yes.
Right? Which again fits into this is like right after, these like first couple episodes, right? And, he asks how London is, etc. It's a nice scene. It feels, there is real chemistry here.
Yeah, it feels genuine in a way that
yes,
Number Six's interactions often do not, because he doesn't trust anyone that's near or around him. And it seems like even the interaction with Cobb has not hardened him against Dutton, who has very clearly had a hard time of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is interesting, right? Like, comparing this to Cobb, you almost wonder, we've thought about this before, right? Like, to what extent do the Wardens actually reuse real details, right? When they're doing this fakey fake thing.
Right.
And so you could imagine that they're basing Cobb's performance in Arrival off of Dutton, who had actually been here for as long as Cobb sort of gestures at being at.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we've got a guy that's really suffering. Act like this guy.
Yeah. Then we jump from this sort of sad little tragic scene to the beach.
To the beach.
Number 6, in full tuxedo, is stopped by Number 2, who's trying to bring him to the party.
As Peter Pan.
As Peter Pan. Which is really interesting. No. I mean, Peter Pan, obviously it's Mary Morris. That's why they do Peter Pan. But it's really interesting in terms of thinking about this in terms of, like, you've mentioned in the past how when they brainwash people, they become more childlike.
Yes.
Right?
What is Neverland but a realm of children?
Exactly, right? And it's a land of games.
Right.
Right? And so it totally makes sense that the ruler of that land, the supervisor of that land, should be Peter Pan. It just works in this really neat way. I like it a lot.
And they don't call attention to it in a way that I really appreciate. Like, they respect their audience enough to let us infer that rather than making it text, right?
Yeah.
They spend that time, honestly, on a really interesting little bit of dialogue.
Yeah. Number 6 mentions that he was looking out at sea, basically.
Right.
Right?
You're waiting for someone, Mr. Tuxedo? Or expecting someone?
Mr. Peter Pan?
So it seems.
With his shadow?
You're being hostile again. What were you looking at?
A light?
A star.
A boat?
An insect.
A plane?
A flying fish.
Somebody who belongs to my world.
This is your world. I am your world. If you insist on living a dream, you may be taken for mad.
I like my dream.
Then you are mad. Now go on up to the town hall.
May I?
You may enter tonight. It's carnival.
So we're seeing Number 6 has all these hopeful interpretations, right? Of it's a means of escape.
Right.
And Number 2 is reinforcing, no. That's not it.
Even if you see things that are what you think that they are, for you, they are these things. They are as inconsequential as a fish jumping out of the sea.
It's really good. It's a really fun little exchange.
It is.
In the script, because again, this was supposed to be a guy playing Number 2, they were going to dress him up as Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
And they explained that, or Number 2 gives the excuse that I'm sure it was for the doctor. Like there's been a mistake. Because I'm not the butcher. It's the doctor Number 40. He's the butcher. I'm your friend. Right?
Sure.
And so they were doing this other thing here of signaling, even as Number 2 has been the one saving him from this experiment and being friendly with him. Don't trust him still.
Right. Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, exactly. Now we get to the town hall, and my goodness, it looks incredible. Do you not like it?
I like the masks.
Yeah, the big mask, the weird pink curtains that are everywhere.
They're fine.
Oh, come on.
They're okay.
The weird masks on the wall. I
appreciate that it's going for a thing, and I'm always happy to see what the art director is doing. Jack Champagne doing really, really good work across the entire series. It's dampened by the fact that I don't think they do anything with it.
Sure, I mean,
I like it when they turn it into the art competition in Chimes of Big Ben.
Sure,
because that's such an over the top, ridiculous scene. This is just this doesn't land for me.
I mean, it's supposed to be a different space, right? That was the community center of the town hall, not the town hall.
Sure, but again, it's like dressing a space up for a particular event, right?
Totally. I mean, I think it works here in that, the things you were talking about earlier, of where does Carnival come from, right? What are the traditional outfits? And harkening back to this like motif of masks, of a hiding of one's identity, right? It's in this scene that 6 asks 2, like, why am I dressed this way?
Right. Sure.
And 2 says, perhaps it's because you don't exist. And I think it's really interesting, right? In comparison to what's everybody else around him dressed like, right? They're all dressed as either fictional characters or historical figures that are like long gone.
Right. Little Bo Peep is here. Peter Pan is here. Napoleon is here. Caesar is here.
Right. And what they're saying, what I think number 2 is saying, like, why is this suit actually picked for him? It's not because he's still himself. It's because the person who you were is a historical or fictional character now.
Sure. That makes sense.
And I think that's really clever, right? And like, it's something where they're not calling your attention to it, except in this one line of saying you don't exist. Like, the person who you were isn't who you are anymore. The person who you were is a costume we're going to have you put on now.
Sure, I can appreciate that part of it. I think let's keep going.
Sure. There's not a lot here. This scene is actually pretty
that's
fast.
What I'm saying.
There's a bit here of 6 and Bo Peep, quote unquote, dancing. Sorry, we should have said 240 is Bo Peep, right? Who always knows where to find her lost sheep, right?
Mm-hmm.
I again want to just briefly mention like the religious readings of this show. He's the sheep, he's the Lamb of God,
of course,
etc.
In continuing refusing to romance individuals when told to dance with Bo Peep 240, he crosses his arms and sort of angrily marches out in front of her while everyone else is ballroom dancing, right? He is not even putting his hands on her.
And it's notable as well that like everybody was completely stock still quiet until 2 orders them to dance, until 6 arrives, right? This is not really a party for them. It's more of like, this is a pastiche they're putting on for 6. They don't do anything till he gets there.
Right, exactly.
There's also this fun bit of, number 2 talking about, these democratic stuff, and number 6 saying, though you have no opposition.
Sure. Yes.
And he knows they have no opposition because he just saw an election.
Sure. Yes.
This is episode 3.
Yeah.
Then he escapes. He wanders the halls for a little bit. He dresses up as a scientist, which is fun. His number is now 116.
He puts on some Clark Kent glasses so that no one can recognize him.
Yeah. We get number 20 here, who's the scientist with the termination order for Roland Walter Dutton. The doctor had asked for some direction, and here it is.
Yep.
Right?
The direction is white text on a black piece of paper.
Yeah.
So they have spent an entire ink cartridge printing out this order. Interestingly, it's Roland Walter Dutton written out, not his number.
Yes.
I'm not sure what to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, he's leaving them. He's no longer in the community. He doesn't get a number anymore.
Sure. In death, members of Project Mayhem get a name.
Number 20 is Lucy. Thank you. Number 20 is Lucy Griffiths. She was the 3rd judge in Chimes of Big Ben.
Okay. Yep.
And she was mostly a horror actress.
Oh.
And, we got this earlier with like the waitress versus the night maid. I kind of like the idea that this is the same character.
Sure.
And that like, okay, she's in her day job as the village, she gets to play around and be an art judge.
Right.
And then at night, she's like delivering execution orders. It's just fun to me.
Yeah. I mean, there's only so many people in the village.
Exactly. Only 250 or something.
Sure.
So he then gets into the morgue. There's this bit of him going through like a series of rooms that are like clearly in different buildings. They're of wildly different styles, right?
Yeah.
But it's just shot nicely so that you can't tell. And he gets to this morgue. He finds the corpse, and it's here.
Really quick, there's some really nice camera work as he's moving through the space. And there's a lot of like, we don't see this space very much. We'll see it again in a little bit, but it's really well put together. And remember, this is really early in the production schedule. So this is like when they first built all this stuff. They talk a lot in the commentary about a lot of the places where our budget was running over. This is it. This is where you're seeing it. Like we had to build all of this stuff. And then we had to say, hey, we've built this. You've got to put this in your script somewhere so we can reuse it.
Yeah, totally. He sees the corpse. Number 2 and the cat show up, right? She reveals the plan, right? The plan being to, you'll note, we'll amend it slightly. We'll amend him slightly. Great delivery from Mary Morris.
That's my cat, Batman.
All right. Okay. Oh, Mary Morris's cat would have been so good.
I'll use this corpse to steal the bank.
The perfect crime. It's here that we get the line that is probably the most famous line from this episode, which is number 6, upon the reveal that the cat is number 2's cat, which we already knew, basically, because it's in her office, and that the cat's a lady. Number 6 says, never trust a woman, not even the 4-legged variety, which,
It's fine.
We've talked about it before.
It's not even the worst instance of misogyny from number 6.
No, it's
sort
not.
of like, all right.
It is revealing about like number 6's gender politics.
It is,
right?
When he gets to have a sincere moment, it is with another man who is another agent. Everyone else is every other woman, even the ones that seem to be sympathetic to him, are enemies. They are subversive. They are infiltrators.
Yes. And it's interesting, right? Because we've never gotten him saying that out loud, right? Like we've gestured at in the past, you've gestured at in the past that like, okay, well actually like everybody betrays him, right? So like, maybe we're making a bigger deal than it seems about the fact that it's consistently, previously you could have said, well, that's just coincidence that there's all these women who are betraying him, that he's like, constant this is happening.
Doesn't he love his wife? Doesn't he love his wife and his daughters with a saintly passion?
Yes.
And yet here he says, no, I don't.
Yes. And you could say that this is just him lashing out in this moment, right? That like his plan is foiled, but he still says it. Right. And what I think is interesting, like, I don't think at the time that this is supposed to be read as a negative thing in the 1960s.
No, I think this struck me as of a type, right? This sounds like something that a secret agent of 1967 would say when presented with this situation.
Yeah, so it's I don't think at the time it was supposed to read that way, but I think that viewing it from our modern era and our more modern sensibilities around gender equality, right? There's this really interesting thing happening in this episode where there are a bunch more women than usual.
Right.
Who are characters who get speaking lines, right? They're not all performed great, but a bunch of them are.
Right.
And a bunch of them have like clear motivations, right? And so I think what's interesting is we can almost read this line as like a turn for the audience in terms of like, okay, if this was written today, this would be good to be how a writer would say, okay, I want you, the audience, to want this character to get some comeuppance. Right, I want you to, for a moment here, be rooting for the bad guys. Not at all intended at the time, but I think it's an interesting way we can look back on it now.
I think that the rest of this episode would work for me in a way, like even going from there and talking more about why this episode doesn't work for me.
Yeah,
I think that if you take this moment of his plan has been foiled and he speaks out of turn or otherwise behaves in a manner that forces number 2's hand. And that is what leads to this kangaroo court that we're about to see. I think that would work a lot better for me because this moment, like a lot of other moments, like where he refuses the date of the triplets with the bad hats, when he goes to sleep on the beach, when he gets caught with the radio earlier, nothing really seems to come of it, right? And so this moment, again, where he's just sort of nonplussed, and number 2 is like, tisk, 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 tisk. I think if there had been a more explosive confrontation here that leads to what we're about to see, then that would have made a lot more sense. And instead, we just sort of, I've said it before, not a whole lot happens here. We just sort of get a series of scenes. We don't get an escalation of tensions of, that was going to be my ticket out of here. How dare you foil me in this moment? Or the flip side of like, I warned you time and time again, and now you're going to pay the price.
Yeah.
Instead, it all reads very flat, right?
Sure. I think that wouldn't necessarily work for me, just because this is clear. The trial has clearly been the plan the whole time.
Maybe.
She mentions at the very beginning, there's going to be a cabaret. This is the cabaret. This is the performance. And she mentions in this moment, in this scene, right? Like, I thought there was going to be entertainment, right? And like that, you're the entertainment.
Sure. What is entertaining about this scene?
I liked it.
No, but I mean, even within the context of the thing, right? Like, is the idea that we're going to shame number 6 for feeling like he could operate outside of our rules, and in fact, he has to operate within our rules? We're going to force him to go through this mummer's act of being tried by Elizabeth and Caesar and who's the third one? Napoleon. I think, but part of what gets me is that this episode is called Dance of the Dead.
Yes,
I'm here for that. I'm here for a bunch of skeletons playing their rib cages like there's xylophones. I'm here for some sort of carnival. Someone in a skull mask being like, "I'm gonna judge your soul, mister. You're the bad guy, actually." But all of this is delivered, and we went over it in the summary. Maybe I should make room for us to say what's going on here a little bit more clearly. But like,
sure,
everything, this like phony prosecution, this calling of witnesses, this judging of what the crime is, this saying, you didn't tell me what the rules are, so there's no ground on which for you to judge me for it.
Yeah.
All of it is played so stoically and so with such seriousness compared to the great big pink curtains, the ridiculous band, the fact that someone is dressed...
The disco ball,
the fact that someone is dressed as Julius Caesar.
Yes.
I want some theater here, I want someone else aside from Mary Morris, who is very reserved in this next scene, to be like, she's dressed as Peter Pan. She should be jumping all over the place. This is my feeling.
That's a very fair feeling. Who do you think the dead are in Dance of the Dead?
I mean, the obvious reading is the corpse, or perhaps Dutton. Presumably it's actually number 6.
Yes, that's my reading.
Right. Because she has told him, they don't know you're already dead.
That's coming up, right? So just as with Free For All, my reading that I've already gestured at earlier, right, is that this whole thing, planting the radio, letting him have access to it, that was all leading up to this scene.
Sure.
Where this is a kangaroo court, right? The only outcome is going to be that they're going to say death, right? Death is your punishment for this crime, because he has to be ceremonially made dead. Because it's this notion of like cutting him off from the rest of the world. You are in the afterlife now, right? You are already dead.
Right. Wearing clothes from his old profession, and never called number 6 during the trial.
Yes, called the prisoner, right? Which is very interesting, given last episode, the general episode, we kept on saying, like, the professor, the prisoner, we kept mixing those up, right? There's this, and it's not the village versus the prisoner, it's the people versus this person.
Yes.
Right? And so there's this notion of, like, we're ceremonially going to kill you. Just as they sort of beat him near to death in the last episode, such that the point after this is an afterlife. It's a different life than the one you had before.
Sure.
You have to accept you are in this new life. And so that's why this all works for me. Like, I don't care that there's not a bigger deal of this courtroom scene, because, like, it's all nothing. It's all play, right? They know the outcome before it starts.
Sure. And I think to be clear, my gripes with it are purely performance here.
Sure.
Because it is play, because it's carnival, because it's something that should, in my mind, have an escalation of ridiculousness, of absurdity, because they are playing with these things. It's Peter Pan, for crying out loud. Peter Pan crows. Peter Pan can fly. Peter Pan fights pirates.
There is a cut fight in the script.
With a crocodile with a ticking clock, I imagine.
Close. Number 6 is supposed to go, "This is ridiculous. I've had enough of this game." And he's supposed to like try to leave, basically. And like some thugs show up and start like fighting him.
Force a stupid hat on his head.
Exactly.
We all wear stupid hats here.
So, maybe this is part of the editing issue. Maybe. Right? The scene should have been bigger.
I mean, like I said, Magoon evidently saw everything that they had put together and was like, "No, this doesn't work. Put it on the shelf."
Right.
One last call out for this episode from the commentary track. I'm pretty sure this is production manager, but I almost don't want to identify which person it was. It is presumably not the subject matter expert, but he asks, "Now, one thing I never got was why they want to sentence a man to death that they want information from. That doesn't make any sense."
God.
This is the guy doing the commentary track for an episode of The Prisoner.
Yeah.
Now, you know what? Maybe that's maybe that's not his job. That's fine.
The reason why this works for me is that I read the other 4 members, besides number 2 here, as totally bought in to the village.
Sure.
Right? There's this great scene during it, right? So, like, there's this interesting bit where we have Bo Peep, number 240, who, like, gets the Star Trek lighting on her for a moment.
I saw
right?
that, yeah.
As she, like, explains
it's like
the
her
crime.
face is letterboxed.
Yes.
Yeah. But she's prosecuting.
Yes. And she clearly doesn't want to be.
No, she's like insistent that this seems to be true, but she doesn't want to be here.
I don't know if you noticed, but we should just call it out real quick. The maid is Queen Elizabeth.
The maid is Queen Elizabeth. The doctor is Napoleon.
Yep.
And Aubrey Morris, the town crier, is Caesar.
Yes. And that's interesting in and of itself, right? That we're getting these like people who we've been seeing day to day in the village.
Yes,
right?
I thought it was a very good use of the actors that they had on hand.
But even more than that, right? Like it emphasizes this is
the people that you are interacting with are you're being judged by your peers. You're being judged by the people.
By the people of the village, right? Later, we're going to get a whole episode about how number 6 is unmutual, right? How he doesn't fit within the bounds of their society, right? He is being judged from within this bounds of the society. As you fall outside of it, you are outside the magic circle, and we need to bring you into the magic circle. And our only way to do that is to kill you.
I mean, yeah.
So this all works for me. This is a fun time for me. My favorite bit, I think we can go through the actual thing fast because it doesn't really matter. But is when number 6 calls the witness, right? He calls for Roland Walter Dutton, having known that he's supposed to be killed soon, right? Wanting to see him,
right? Specifically saying he is due to be killed and therefore is free to say what needs to be said.
Yes, he's a man I think I knew, a man who is scheduled for death. So many may say better the things that need saying. Right. And interesting, he's a man I think I knew, right? He's seen Cobb by this point.
Right.
He knows that he sometimes thinks he knows a guy and he doesn't know the guy. Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so, well, actually, he never learned about that, I think. But anyway, but the reaction from the town crier to the name being mentioned, it's just a close-up on his face as he sort of nervously says, "No names are used here."
Right.
And even in this shot, right, they're not using a name. It's still the prisoner. It's still a role. But you get a real sense of like, this is somebody who's completely bought in, who is terrified of the village and what they will do if they break the rules.
Yeah, all 3 of the judges, I think, paint a compelling picture of people who are part of the system who are still scared of the system and so feel obliged to obey by it, to obey its rules, whatever they might be. I get less that sense from 240. I get alternately a sense that she actually believes these things, or at least behaves as if she believes these things. But
totally,
I have such a poor read of her interiority that I have a better read of Caesar's interiority just from this scene
for sure.
than I have of someone that I've seen the entire episode, right?
Or like the Daymaid, right? Like the Daymaid does such a better job.
Oh, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And she gets like really fun little glances back and forth at number 6 here, right? Like
she in fact says, yes, he has his rights. Bring him as witness.
It's just a bad performance, unfortunately, which sucks. But what are you going to do? So number 2 brings in Roland, who is now in a jester outfit with a balloon on a stick, right? They've done something to him that he's just reverted to this like childlike state, right? Just sort of smiles aimlessly.
Yeah, he has a white balloon reminiscent of Rover as like a jester's mace.
And then they do the, clearly there's nothing that's going to get out of this guy.
Yep.
So they do they have their findings, where they say it's going to be death, right?
Number 2, the defendant basically doesn't defend him, but says, yeah, he did wrong, but he's new. Let's be nice to him. Let's give him another chance.
Yeah, being the good cop.
Right.
And in the script, upon being said, that it's death, the mob is supposed to immediately fall on him. And
that does not happen here.
That does not happen. Instead, we get 6 slowly walking through the crowd back towards the exit.
As if he's like, I'm done with this. He doesn't say anything, but he's very clearly acting like, all right, whatever, I'm leaving.
Yeah. And then everybody bursts
and
into
then he starts
action.
running away and everyone chases him and screams.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
This is a pretty good moment, I will admit.
Yeah. It's just lovely, just surreal.
This is the energy that I wanted for this entire previous scene.
That's fair.
People hooting and hollering.
It feels like a nightmare.
Yeah.
Right? Then we get some great bits of him sort of fleeing an earlier little secret floor passage we had seen in an earlier scene, right? He takes that instead to lose them. He goes to the secret room, the big fancy room that we saw 2 enter.
Oh, this is the room that 2 entered with
number 40. Or not with, but when talking to number 40.
Now I understand everything. I literally did not know what this room was or what.
Yeah. So again, this
is where she communicates with number 1.
Supposedly.
Right.
I mean, this is again, this is not an episode that like talks, that like says out loud a bunch of stuff. And sometimes that works really well, like her being Peter Pan. Sometimes that doesn't work as well.
Right.
Regardless, he in the actual scene, he gets in there completely quietly. We can hear like a tick, tick, tick noise in the background behind like a folding, like changing thing.
Right.
He moves the changing thing aside and we see that it's like this machine, this like telemax is what it's called in the script.
Right.
But it's like a telegraph machine or something, right? It's receiving some radio signals or something, turning that into text. He immediately starts ripping out its guts.
Yeah, he hates computers.
As we learned.
He hates computers and all robots.
Even the 4-legged variety. And we then get this fun little shot where he looks up and we see...
number 6 would hate Boston Dynamics.
Oh, yeah, he would.
Yeah,
He's kicking those dogs over.
Yeah.
And we see a lady sort of fixing her hair in what looks like a window, but we're told, no, it's a one-way mirror.
Right.
As number 2 and 240, again, re-enter the scene. 2 says to 240, hey, go move along.
Yeah.
Right? Get them out of here.
Party's over.
Party's over. She and 6 have this little back and forth where basically she says, they don't know you're already dead.
Right.
Right? She mentions that 240 will no longer be his observer.
Sure.
Because observers shouldn't get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you made her be part of the court, but I think they're talking about involved that way. They're talking about involved in that she has feelings for him, right?
Could have fooled me.
I know. Again, the acting is not where it should have been. 6 mentions, you're not going to win. I'll never give in. And 2 just responds, how very uncomfortable then for you, old chap. And starts laughing as the telemax machine springs back to life. The script is very different.
How does the script work here?
In the script, it's sort of the same up to this moment. There's a few small differences. So, for example, I already mentioned about the mob. The mob is supposed to start fighting each other.
Okay, sure.
We still get the same bit. There's bits where they're supposed to be chanting something. 6 is a lot more vocal. So, he meant when he gets into the room, the secret room, he says, you're there. I know you're in there in the script.
Oh, like he's looking for number 1.
Exactly.
Oh.
And then the biggest change is the last line is not this old chap line. 6 responds. he says, "But rewarding, old chap. Being dead does have its advantages. Shall we dance?" And then it's immediately supposed to cut back to the ballroom as everyone, we see the, Caesar, Napoleon, and Elizabeth I dancing in a ring. We see 6 and 2 dancing. 6 and 240 dancing. They're dancing as if the devil is playing. They're dancing feverishly, right? And then it's supposed to pull out from there. It's supposed to pull out from the party. So we see the village as the music goes faster and faster. And the village is brightly lit up at night because it's like this beautiful carnival nighttime scene. We go further and further out until it's just like a white dot in black emptiness of space. And then Peace Face. And then the bars slam shut.
That sounds really good.
It's a wildly different energy.
It is.
Right? They said they didn't even film the ending.
They didn't.
Right?
Yeah.
They didn't film this ending at all. And I can only imagine it's because Six said, or McGowan says, Six would never do that. Because what we're seeing here is him giving in to, as, Perskine's last script we just looked at, enjoy being dead.
Right.
And like that would go completely against how Six acts throughout the rest of the series.
Particularly as early on as this. It would seem very peculiar for him to participate in that. I think if you had that exact same scene without him at the ball, it would work.
Sure.
But I can also see it being very expensive.
Totally. I mean, but I think these are all extras anyway, besides like the 3 actors that we've already called out as being there. So there's ways that you could have done this pretty fast, but even getting your extras to like act in a particular way is tough, right?
Right.
Like they're just sort of yelling mindlessly. It's not like there's like, any aggression there or anything.
Yeah. It seems, more chaos than violence.
Right. But, we've talked a lot about the dreamlike nature of the village, right?
Totally, yeah.
And we talked before
about... It's a game. It's a bunch of children screaming at each other on a playground.
Yes. And like we talked just a moment ago about how it's nightmarish, the way he's like slowly walking away and then everything bursts into like a jump scare, basically.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like that the ending is what it is. It's sort of this interesting non-ending of just 2 basically laughing at him for not getting it.
Yeah,
right.
I think that's of a piece. Absolutely, I think that fits perfectly well.
Just the fact that the Telemax machine, with no internal circuitry, right, no explanation for how it's doing this, coming back on.
Yes, that would hit a lot better if we knew what it was or what it was doing, or that it was tied to number 1 in any way.
Sure. But it's part of this it's this interesting thing about technology, right? Like. Number 2, and we talked about this before in terms of like stagecraft or magecraft, right? Like number 2 with the radio on the Overlook, he gets this message which seems completely targeted to him.
Right.
Which by random chance would seem impossible, right? It's unbelievable that he would get this. Now, it's, as we mentioned, it's totally imaginable to say, no, they planned the whole thing. They knew when to start this radio broadcast because they saw when he was going to turn it on, right? But still, there's this sense of like a magic connection here. And in the same thing in this scene, we could imagine there's some other explanation for how they did this, right? Like there's a hidden back compartment. It has all the real circuitry. There's ways they could have done this. But it has the same notion of like, this is magic as far as we can tell. It's so beyond, they are so beyond him in terms of their capacity that it feels otherworldly.
Yeah, I like McGowan, I think I see the gaps, and I feel like this could be like one of my favorite episodes, but it needs punch-ups, right? It needs structure that it does not have. I need one other shot that tells me this is where number 1 is. This is an important room for some reason, because number 2 is very clearly talking to number 1 on the phone at the very beginning.
Or some other higher ranking person,
sure, right? Yeah.
It's another number 12 or something.
Or something, right? But there's no indication that this is a particularly significant, that this is the only way that number 1 can communicate or something like that, or that number 1 is ensconced in here and it turns out it was a computer the whole time, even the general, an episode that I'm not especially well inclined towards does a better job of like setting your expectations and then dismantling them in the ways that only the Village can. This is more just like a series of images that's like, okay, I guess that's a thing that's happening.
They're pretty cool images, though.
They're good images, but they need... but unfortunately, media is sound and images in linear time, and these are just like... I need more connective tissue.
I don't mind... The rest of the Prisoner series is in my head, right? And
in your mind.
So, in my mind. I'm like... fucking Big Blue Smurf man from Watchmen. What the fuck is his name? Dr. Manhattan. So like Dr. Manhattan, right? He sees the whole picture of the whole thing. Right.
He experiences all things independently of timeline.
Right. Because he's just experiencing time all at once. The sequentiality is an illusion. Right. And so in my Dr. Manhattan view of The Prisoner, right, where I'm seeing all the episodes all at once, right? This fits in really nicely because I know that, again, on a rewatch, right? I think it's stronger on a rewatch because I know this is not the only way to talk to number one, right?
Sure.
Because I know that, like, this room is important, and I know that, like, number 40 at least thinks that, like, this is the room that two goes in to talk to one. Right.
This is where she does her texting.
This is where she does her texting, yes. Her telemaxing. And I know that the way this fits in thematically with this concept of, like, Six is already dead. This works really nicely in terms of seeing him being sentenced to death, of seeing this metaphorical death happening. That fits in very nicely with what's happening in the rest of the series for me.
Right.
I agree with you. Like, it could have been bigger. They could have been doing more with the acting here. But, like, the directing is so lovely. The composition is so lovely. Even the sets are so lovely here. I don't really mind it. I'm here for the surreal imagery. It's fine if you're not.
No, and this is the joy of doing the podcast, right? Is that you're Dr. Manhattan. I'm
Rorschach?
Am I Rorschach in this?
Maybe you're Rorschach.
I don't know. Here, I'll describe why I feel this way, and then we can identify which.
Yeah. We'll assign you. This is a quiz.
Yeah. Which
Watchman are you?
Which Watchman likes milk the most?
The comedian.
Yeah, probably the comedian. Yeah. Like I see it apart from the podcast connection, and apart from you being my friend. I see this, and I see the things that are good, but I can only see them in the context of what I perceive as absence, of what I see as, yes, this is here, but the rest of it isn't also there. This is, I said that this is feels like a pilot or a proof of concept episode, right?
Sure.
It feels like them playing in the space that they are going to execute on so well. Many of the players behind the scenes working with these same sorts of ideas and working with these same sorts of scenes in such doing things so well.
Yeah.
That I don't feel like this episode does something new and unusual to make up for what I perceive as the gaps. That it doesn't have necessarily the novelty. Even, sadly, Mary Morris's terrific performance. We have other episodes where there is a woman as number 2. This is the only one where she is the explicit, from the intro all the way through to the end, as the triumphant number 2, right? An episode where a number 2 succeeds. Even that, I don't think, doesn't really make it work for me as like an episode that stands on its own in spite of what I perceive as its flaws.
Sure.
Everything that I see is held back by what isn't there and what could have been if something else had happened, right? I can imagine a better episode. Unfortunately, all I have is the episode that's in front of me. So yeah, I guess I'm Rorschach. I see the world in black and white. And I wear platform shoes.
Or it could be Ozymandias, right? You're imagining all the different possible episodes.
That's right. I'm Ozymandias. I'm watching every episode of The Prisoner at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Next to my big cat.
You have a big machine set up so you can kill me.
That's true. I do have a big machine set up.
Well, that's an episode.
It sure was.
Should we do our bits?
Why did you call it that?
Yeah, because they're bits. We're doing bits.
I like to think of them more as segments.
We can call them segments. Components.
No one calls them components. Matthew, what's your number one with a bullet?
My number one with a bullet, I lauded her many times throughout the episode. I've got to give it to Mary Morris. This whole episode only really works as like this weird, surreal, dreamlike, game-like, childlike thing, if it works at all for anyone.
Right.
And I think if not for her performance and the way that she really adds in character and the way that she's playful the whole time, no matter what's happening, it's always a game to her, right? I think that works so well in this episode, and she's adding so much depth to this character in the lines she was given.
Is there a particular line or a particular scene for Mary Morris that stands out above the rest?
It's got to be that bit of her getting off the phone with some supervisor or somebody else who's like just at the same level of her and like just rolling her eyes hard. Oh, I wish you could be here. Ooh, this guy. I love that. That's so good.
Nice.
How about you?
I think I've really got to give it up to Denise Buckley.
Okay. Yeah, totally fair.
The maid who, as I called out, certainly the best maid we've had so far.
Mm-hmm.
One of the judges, Queen Elizabeth, seems to have an actual idea of what it means to try and get in nice with number 6.
Mm-hmm.
Well done, Denise Buckley. Well done.
Well done. Welsh representation.
More Welsh judges.
That might be an actual campaign in the UK. I wouldn't be surprised.
I have no idea. I've never been to the UK.
Yeah, well, it's just like The Prisoner. Shall we rate this episode?
I think we have to rate this episode.
Do you want to go first, or shall I?
I would love to hear yours before I decide how mean I'm going to be and in what quantity.
You should be as mean as you want.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, you're welcome. Just to be clear for the viewers, I've been positive, even as Brendan has been negative these last couple episodes. That will change. I will join.
We're going to switch sides.
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
Soon I'll be on the other side of the Iron Curtain. Matthew will be here in Florida, fighting for freedom.
Yep. I'm going to give this 3 out of 3 judges.
Wow.
I think this is a really good episode.
That's astonishing, and I will fight you to the ends of the earth.
Sounds great.
That's unbelievable. 3 out of 3
From heaven's
judges.
heart I stab at thee. Jeez. Or hell's heart I stab at thee. Oh, I'm coming from heaven, though. You're coming from hell.
Man. Thinking about whales. When I say more whale judges, you might think Welsh, but no, I mean
Free Willy.
Big Free Willy.
After eating Lassie in the Forgotten episode.
God, orcas are so cool. They can kill anything.
And they do. And they will. By order.
I'm going to give this episode 3 out of 17 episodes. Because if it had been there, I might have been kinder to it. But unfortunately.
And unfortunately for you, Brennan, that means I won the game. It was the long play. I wanted you to rate it 3 out of 17.
That's true. But unfortunately, you've also been hoisted by my game because you may not realize it, but you, like everyone, is wearing a silly hat.
No! I don't have a hat in range. Hell. I should have prepared for this. I should have had a hat.
Yeah, why didn't you anticipate my bit? Or as I call them, segments.
Well, should we talk about what we're doing next, or do you want to do that after thanks?
Have we ever been consistent about that?
I have no idea.
I don't know. I was tortured by the people that kidnap and torture podcast hosts, so.
We can do some thanks first.
Yeah, we'll do some thanks. Let's thank Cy Sweetman, who made the art for our nice little podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. I like it a lot.
Me too.
You can find more work like it at cyfsweetman.car.co. I'd also like to thank Devin Nelson, who made the theme song for our show. You can find it and more stuff like it at devindecibel.bandcamp.com. Part of the commentary was with the editor, and so they were asking, Patrick McGowan places pauses in places where no one places them. Does that cause problems in the edit? And the editor says, yes. Also, Patrick McGowan watches me over his shoulder when I'm doing the edit, so that also controls the edit.
Yeah.
Apparently he's really good at it.
I mean, when he cares to be involved, he tends to lead to good products.
That's true. Matthew, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at Matthew Guz at Blue Sky. Brendan, where can they find you?
You can find me at brendanmcleod.com on Blue Sky. You can find the show at the-prisoners-dilemma.com. Next time, we'll be watching
Checkmate. If this sounds like a drop-in, that's because it is. We said the wrong episode name when we recorded. So now I'm dropping in to let you know we're watching Checkmate.
Hey, Brendan.
Hey, Matthew.
I'll be seeing you.
Not if I see you first.